Tuesday, January 2nd, 2024. Administrator Chansky, can you call the roll?
Ball.
Present.
Jensen.
Present.
Maroney.
Present.
Scott.
Aye.
And Zierden.
Present. All right, I'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I please get a motion for the approval or amendment of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say, oh, go
I
ahead.
would actually like to make a request to remove from the consent agenda 8F. So it would become potentially 11E, D.
Can you give your reasoning?
It would be 9A.
I just would like to have some discussion on a couple of things.
Were you able to call Administrator Chansky prior to the meeting to discuss 8F?
Madam Mayor, I don't think it's any of your business whether I had a chance to call the administrator or not.
I don't appreciate that, actually, but I
Well, I
do
don't
think
appreciate
that,
the question.
did you have an opportunity to speak with Administrator Chansky or anyone else about what was on the agenda? That is a yes or no question.
To which I am not going to give an answer.
Well, then I'm not going to entertain that, but is there a
Madam-
second?
So, yeah, the motioners would have to
Yeah.
amend their motion if they to agree to that.
Anyone a second?
I mean, it's fine, I can amend the motion, it'll move to item 9A. Motion to approve the consent agenda with that movement of item 8F.
Any other discussion on this?
Does Councilmember Maroney also agree as the seconder? Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries. All right, we will go ahead and move on to the open forum, but we will not be discussing disc golf tonight at the open forum. We will have an opportunity for a representative for the Breezy Point Neighborhood Alliance to come up and let us know, why they have brought the petition to us. Otherwise, is there anyone else that wants to come up and speak?
Am I allowed to speak then?
Not on the disc golf course.
Not at all. Okay. Well, I'm going to speak to toilet tanks then.
Okay.
Shane Humphrey, 4556 Main Street, Pequot Lakes. Last month, Mr. Toft stood up here and shared some things with you. He lied to you and said that I attacked him at the grocery store in Pequot Lakes. I want to tell you what really happened. I overheard Mr. Toft talking for several minutes, talking very ill of myself, my name specifically. This is in the grocery store, aisles over. Ill of myself, the disc golf club, members of this council. I heard some of your names up there. I rang up my groceries and proceeded to try to exit the store where Mr. Toft was continuing to defame us to another community member. He saw me, turned, and blocked me from exiting the store. He screamed, "There's the guy right there. He's the one responsible for all of it." I responded, "You know what, Bill? I really wish you and I could work together. But since day one, you have attacked me and everyone around me. You have never taken a moment to discuss options with me. You've insulted me. You've slandered my name around town. I can't go to a restaurant around here without hearing about this. You defamed my image in Nextdoor app, in the newspaper, other locations, and outright lied about all this just because you don't want a disc golf course in the city park behind your house. Mr. Toff also stated, in the last meeting and previous meetings that he has gone business to business to advising people not to support this course or the fundraising of the club. He has stated that disc golfers are poor. Disc golf is not a sport. This list is very long and not appropriate coming from a member of the City Hall. Especially when he makes comments saying we haven't held up our end of the deal for the fundraising, which I have presented on 4 different times. I've never had any sort of approval to move forward with anything from Park and Rec or City Council of any sort. And also, how would I go about advertising for this fundraising for this course when we have a member of Park and Rec Committee going business to business, denouncing us, telling them not to support us, not to support this effort, but then comes up to these meetings and says, why haven't they held up their part of the deal? I have stories about what happened on this course this summer. I have a story from a neighbor. Would you allow me to read that at least?
I would really prefer that we stick to this because I think it would help us move along on this topic.
Well, I think there's some transparency that needs to happen in reality as far as what type of what we've dealt with out there.
Right, and I understand. I just feel like tonight we would really like to stick with this on the agenda. Thank you.
You should stay if you have the guts.
All right, guys, come on.
All right, I had 2 items I was going to talk about tonight. I'm going to talk about the first one first, and I'll address, I don't know what the color of the sky is in his world. First of all, Councilman Jensen asked me to speak about the food shelf tonight because I have been volunteering there for going on 3 years, and he just wanted me to give some my experience that I've had there. First of all, I want to thank all of you for getting behind the fundraiser last month, and Madam Mayor for your financial contribution. There is a huge need right now, and right now the demand exceeds supply. Last year, there were 16,424 visits at the Lakes Area Food Shelf. There were 45,859 pounds were donated by folks, and 221,096 pounds were bought by the food shelf to distribute. When I started almost 3 years ago, the majority of the folks were older, elderly adults. In the last year and a half, we've seen a majority of people become young families, young mothers with children and full families, and they don't want to be there, and they're very thankful for the assist. In fact, in 2023, 425 new families joined the Pequot Lakes Food Shelf. And I know we talked about it here, there were 50 or 60 new residents here in 1 year. We're talking 425. There's a massive need out there right now. 35 a month. Why is this happening right now? Well, inflation's has been 20% the last 3 years with no bump in wages. 65% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck right now, and they cannot come up with $400 if there's an emergency. More Americans right now are working 2 jobs than any time in our history. In short, Bidenomics has not worked. The Lakes Area Food Shelf offers, besides just food, and we turn no one down, there's no restrictions. The average visit is 2 a month per family, per household, but we don't put restrictions on anybody. If they need food, they come in and get it. There's also, they've partnered with 4 other organizations that help people find other assistance, housing. There's a dentistry organization that comes in and looks at their teeth, and if they need work, they will find a dentist to do it pro bono. So, I mean, there's a big need in this community, and these Lakes Area Food Shelf is helping to further that regard. So again, I think volunteering is a private endeavor, and whether you're physically showing up to help or donating finance, you're monetarily, it's a way we can all make a little difference in our world right now, and you can find a little grace by going in there and helping out. I want to thank you again, and we look forward to your continued support in the future. I'm going to make just 60 seconds of comments about what you just heard. I have a witness to the first half of that conversation, and I really don't want to use his name, but he witnessed the conversation, and none of that was true. I didn't stop him from leaving. I didn't even see him in the grocery store. I didn't even talk about the disc golf course to the gentleman next to me, asked how it was going. And we had about 1 sentence, and that was it. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. I mean, I can give the witness to you, and you can confirm it with, if you so choose. So I can't talk about the disc golf course at all. All right, thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank you, Bill.
contribution.
I would just like to piggyback on Bill's comments on the food shelf. When I delivered the food on December 26th, in speaking to the director, Tammy Larson, she was very concerned that there's not going to be enough food to make it until the next truck delivery, which is January 11th. I understand the economy's tough. If people can give, please do so. They help a lot of people in our community and surrounding communities.
Yes, and thank you to all the residents who did donate food and drop off food and contribute monetarily. It was really helpful. So, and thank you for reaching out and doing that. Is there anyone else that wants to come forward?
Tracy Curtin, 31709 Green Scene Drive. I guess I had something that I wanted to share, but since we're not speaking specifically on the topic, I guess I'm just going to appeal to you as a mother as you think about and consider options tonight. I think I maybe briefly spoke about it before, that as a parent, you want what's best for your kids, and you try to create that environment, and you make the best choices you can for them, because that is what's in your control up until the point that they're young adults. And then you hope you've done your job to set them off correctly, right? And our homes, there are homes greatly impacted right now that is taking with an activity that is impacting our ability to create that environment for our families. There is unpredictability day in and day out, and that is hard as a parent, to not be able to tell your kid, sure, go outside in your yard by yourself. My Judah is 9. He has twice been affected by the amenity. Once when he was completely alone out there and he was addressed. He's 9. Ms. Aroni, I ask you, because our kids go to school together and we see each other at functions, when you are considering what moves forward today, I want to frame it in a way, parent to parent, but when you see my Judah at school, can you walk up to him and say, I did what was best, and feel good about it? That is my plea to you. Do you feel good about what choices you're going to make tonight when you look at him at those school functions next to your kiddo, when they're playing baseball together? We have tried our best to let you know what has happened. I document it.
So I did cut him off earlier. I want to keep
Yep.
it consistent. I'm sorry, I
No.
don't mean to cut you off. I want to keep it.
appreciate the time.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Deborah Buckner, and we live on Chickasaw Circle. The reason I'm wanting to speak tonight is about the plan for the safe trail, and just wondering whether there's been any thought or consideration about reducing the speed limit on 11 as you prepare and think about how the safe trail would impact not only the route, let's say to Eagle View, if in fact kids want to walk on it, but also how it impacts, just as you pointed out the last meeting, the growth in our community. 55 is probably not a good speed because people exceed it. We know that's the nature of human beings, to not necessarily follow rules. But we also recognize how much the traffic has increased. We've only been here for a little over 7 years, but it has just significantly grown. And we would just ask that as you think about the safe trail, that you maybe incorporate some reduction in speed, perhaps from Eagle View, and then have it be consistent as how it flows into the rest of Breezy Point, because it does drop down to 45, but I'm not sure how many people notice that either. So just asking that that be a consideration as you think about that route. And then one final question, and I don't know if you're able to answer it at this time, because I know the application isn't awarded until 2028, I believe, but also wondering what the intended use of that would be, because there is also a snowmobile route that's adjacent to that, and whether or not, I mean, does that mean pushing the area further up toward the homeowners? We're one of the ones that are on that side. Just kind of wondering how that's all going to flow together. So just asking for those.
Yeah, I can go
thoughts.
ahead and answer. So the first thing I want to address is speed. I know that we've had a lot of conversations actually about speed. So the one thing that the city can't on its own control is the speed of County Road 11 and 4. So we would have to work with the county. So we will definitely be doing that, like as we move through that. And then we have budgeted for a feasibility study for the trail. So again, as we move through the process, we're hoping that we can address all of those concerns that people had had. And I hope that you stay involved, because I think that it does help, especially to have residents involved in that process as we find the best way to put this out for the community.
Okay. Thank
All right,
you.
thank you.
Thank you for your input.
Is there anybody else? All right, so we will go ahead and close the open forum, and we will move on to the life-saving awards.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, Chief Sandell.
Our two bearded heroes in the back of the room are with us once again tonight. On December 2nd, Officer Nicholas Salvavold and EMT Officer Kyle Rustad responded to County Road 11 and East Horseshoe Lake Road for a report of an unresponsive female. At this time, dispatch was giving the caller instructions on CPR. Officer Rustad arrived first and placed an advanced airway and began rescue breaths. Shortly after, Officer Salvavold arrived and took over chest compressions. During treatment, officers observed signs of opiate use, and naloxone was given. The patient was revived and transported by North Memorial. Excellent work, guys. If you would please come forward. I'd like to get a picture with both of them. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, up next, I would like to introduce Candace Zimmerman from the Region 5 Development Commission.
That's hard to follow. Thank you for your service. All right, my name is Candace Zimmerman. I am a member of the Region 5 Development Commission team, and I'm sure you all know a lot about Region 5 Development Commission, or R5DC, because Mayor Zierden does sit on our commission. Thank you for that service. But I'm here tonight to talk to you about one of the services that Region 5 provides to the area, and one that I work closely with, being on the energy and environment pillar of Region 5. So I want to just describe this process and see if it is a good fit for Breezy Point. You did receive a flyer in your handout, so this is what I'll be referring to tonight. It'll be a good thing to go back to. It does have our website on there, which will provide some examples of the 10 previous cities that have already been through this process and some of the projects that they've been able to implement along the way. To answer the question, what is energy and environment planning? It is a 5-year prioritized plan that enhances existing plans and puts projects into action. So Region 5 development team comes in a 4-session process alongside the comprehensive planning process and really dives into some of the issues where climate change may be impacting the community. So some of the things that we look at are maybe straight line winds from extreme weather events, tornadoes, drought, extreme rain events. And then we take a look at the existing plans that are in place, such as the county hazard mitigation plans, watershed plans, and we put that all together into those prioritized goals. And then if Region 5 knows about it, we have our ear to the ground and we can help make those projects come to life. So we really hope to just bridge the gap that these plans might have and really just move forward on some of those projects that have been sitting on a back burner, or maybe they come to light during that planning process, and we can help bring some capacity to that process. So I do want to mention that this environment and energy planning is not meant to replace comprehensive planning. It is meant to enhance it. So it looks as though Breezy Point has had a comprehensive plan in place in 2020. I don't know how often you do updates to your comprehensive plan. Most people take a look around that 5-year mark. And during that update, we could also incorporate the energy and environment plan into that. So for Region 5, when we're engaged in this type of work, really what we're looking for are what are the trends and what are community members seeing, what are all of our cities seeing as we do this work. And we can kind of find those trends and then go out and try to find some funding in order to make some things happen. So we are fortunate enough to have some capacity. We have another funder that is supporting staff work to go out and find those grants, to write those grants, to do some project implementation so the cost doesn't fall directly on those small cities that we're working with. So for the 10 cities that have had the opportunity to go through the energy and environment planning, there are some really exciting projects that they've been able to do. We've been able to fully fund their planning process. That means the staff time for Region 5 to come in. We've been able to help them complete goals such as citywide cleanup days, changing their street lights to LEDs, some solar projects, EV charging stations, and many more that you'll be able to see on that website. And some unexpected outcomes even came out of those processes too. And we've been able to, one example is a lot of the cities, those 10 cities had expressed concern with vacant lots and buildings, and we were just recently able to partner them with experts from MPCA and the Kansas State University experts on brownfields so they can start working towards cleaning up those areas. So one of the main concerns that you might have is, what does this all cost? And I might have mentioned before, but our goal is that it costs nothing to the city, and that we would be able to start implementing those projects with funding capacity from Region 5. And the only action that we need from council members tonight is just think about this process. If it works well for you, please reach out to me. I'll leave my cards on the back table out there. And we do have a grant opportunity that will come up here early in 2024, in which we would then reach out and ask for a letter of support. But no action immediately is needed at this time.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for her?
None from me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, so we will go ahead and move on to the next item, 7A. Can I please get the representative for the Breezy Point Neighborhood Alliance to come forward and state why you're here and what you hope to accomplish tonight, please?
Jonathan Curtin, 31709 Green Scene Drive. I'm here representing myself and some of our neighbors. We're residents of the White Birch 16 development. I've been here a few times, and I wrote my notes down this time, so hopefully we get through them quickly. Dear Council, I am grateful for the opportunity to once again address the ongoing concerns our neighborhood faces due to the disc golf expansion. Over the past few months, through conversations and reflection with my neighbors and members of council, I've sought to better understand how exactly we reached the current situation that we're in. I personally believe that we lack sufficient data and evidence at the genesis of this project. We acknowledge that there would be unknowns. I think that was said multiple times, and I think that's totally fair. However, I do think that we now possess ample data from the past months to make an informed decision about these issues. And I hope you'd entertain a few questions that I hope will aid you in making whatever decision you're going to make tonight. Councilmember Maroney, as fathers of sons the same age, if the expansion were proposed to be behind your home, would you support it knowing that your son could be subjected to verbal abuse from players, being told things such as "you suck" and "go inside" while playing in his own backyard?
He's been told that today, so I'm confused on why I'm being singled out.
Right.
I have multiple questions.
Kids here.
Right.
And being singled out, this is a council of 5. There's 5 decision makers here.
I'm asking you all the question.
You don't have to answer it if you don't want
You
to.
don't have to answer it.
I don't feel
That's
like
fine.
it's that's appropriate.
Is it not appropriate to be held accountable for decisions you make via questions from the residents that live here?
Well, then my question to you is, do you think that residents who are closest to a public amenity have more say than residents who are not?
I don't think it's about say. I think it's about the stakes that are at play for different people.
But do you think that the residents, because you come to us with a petition, they're basically residents who are next to an amenity. And so I'm asking you, from a public amenity perspective, because it's not just disc golf, right? You can ask any council in any city, anyone that lives next to anything public, whether it's a public beach or a park, or if there's a gas station going in, the people closest to it, we know this are the most affected. So my question to you is, do you think that residents who are closest to a public amenity or any other development should have more say about what happens with that amenity than another resident who is not?
I don't think it's about say. I mean,
But you're coming here and asking us to make a decision, so
Right.
it is about say.
I think there is more at stake for residents that abut this amenity. Yes, absolutely.
Do you think you have more of a voice, though, or more of a decision?
I don't think we had a voice at all.
But again, my question to you is that, do you think that you have more of a say, given the fact that you're closest to the amenity?
It's not about a say, it's about what's at stake.
Yes, that relates to you.
I have more at stake as a property owner on this amenity than a disc golfer does, who does not own property on this amenity, and who has multiple options in the region to go play disc golf. If it's about the privacy and the security of the residents and the availability of a unique niche amenity, then yes, I think that our voices, the voices of those living on that area and who have to live with the ill behavior, should be weighed more than disc golf. And I think that's been the issue from the beginning. We had 18 holes of disc golf. We now have 36 holes of disc golf in a town of 2,500 people. That's a lot of disc golf.
So when other amenities come to different cities, so whether it's public beach in Cross Lake or a playground, or again, what I'm asking though is that if the weight of the residents closest to that amenity hold more than any other resident, don't you think that we wouldn't have any amenities at all, given the fact that every amenity in every city, there are people that come to say, I don't want this. So, and that, I think it's a fair question, because at the end of the day, how much weight are we as council members? Are we supposed to look at certain residents and say that your voice has more weight, yours has less because you don't live next to it? I mean, that's what I'm trying to understand,
Right.
because we are going to get pushback
Sure.
no matter what amenity
Sure.
comes.
And I'm not trying to single you out, Michael. I have questions for all of you on this, and the reason why I ask these questions is not to be disrespectful. Please don't understand. It is to build empathy for what we are dealing with, because we feel completely unheard. We feel there was an article in the Echo, right? Shane left. He was the author of that article. It calls us liars, calls us slanderers. Yet we have provided months of evidence of what's actually happening, and we honestly feel like it just lands on deaf ears. We feel like we have no representation in this matter. So to your question, I don't think it's that it should carry more weight, but it should certainly be factored in. And we had all admitted that it was never factored in. Residents were not made aware that trees were going to go down until the trees started falling.
And we've recognized as a council that, again, we have a different council, it's a different year. Like, there are a lot of things that we can hindsight 2020, right? And we've said, yes, we were going to make sure that those things did not necessarily happen in the future with more communication. So for being here tonight, what is the goal for you? What are you looking to get out of tonight's agenda item?
So I'll finish my last two paragraphs. The letter that's before you this evening, in the letter that's before you this evening, my neighbors and I request the closure of the 9 holes nearest to our properties to preserve our home's security and privacy. We don't think that this request is unreasonable. Again, especially considering that our small community provides more disc golf than most, even at the expense of other amenities. We're not opposed to thoughtful development of recreational facilities. I personally really support it. But we do strongly believe that the evidence that we have presented to you over the last months demonstrate that this golf course, one that intrudes upon a residential neighborhood, is neither considerate nor appropriate. We respectfully ask that you diligently consider this request, and we thank you for your time.
Anybody have any questions?
Is there a possibility to just say
No.
anything else?
No, because we've not given it to both sides. There are people here tonight that want to speak for it and against it, and we need to draw a line at this point. I've actually gone through every single meeting since a year ago, and we've listened to almost 4 hours of testimony over the disc golf course. So I do believe that as a council, we have listened, and I think that tonight we have the discussion of what the petition has brought forward and how we move forward is now where I would like to hear from the rest of you about your thoughts on this and, what we think we should do moving forward. At the end of the day, I do not believe any resident has any bigger voice than any other resident in this city or in any city. Every resident, every taxpayer has equal voice. Doesn't matter where the amenity is, because if we only listened to residents that were closest, we would never have any amenity. Because as we know, even being up here, everything that we try to do, there's always going to be people that oppose it. Always. It doesn't matter what we do. So we have to be able to have some kind of grounded opinion in the fact that no resident has more voice than the other. And at this time, that is my hard stance on that. And like I said, we've already listened 4 hours. Our entire year, we have done, I think, as much as we can to listen to residents. So I do want to hear from the rest of the council on how to move forward with regards to the petition for the removal of holes.
Well, I want to start off by, in making my comments, saying, and I've said this before, please do not include me as a representative of this council as a part of the decision to move the disc golf course forward, because I think it's been abundantly clear at this point in time that I have been the only dissenting vote on this council. So to say that the council's position or the council's done that is not speaking to my role on this council as an elected official accurately at all. And I hope that I make that point very clear. I got a couple of questions and then a few remarks. I'm wondering why it took a year for the residents' petition in this way to get on the council agenda? I would like an answer to that question, because best I understand, it's effectively been a year that the residents in that neighborhood have been asking the council, have been authoring petitions that have gone nowhere.
I will answer that. Mr. Chansky has a rule. He will add anything to the agenda that a council member brings forward, and you have not brought anything forward to be added to the agenda. You don't need me. You don't need anyone else on this council. You, as a council member, have the authority according to his role. So at any point, you could have brought it to the council to be added to the agenda.
I will take that a step further, respectfully, and say that it's not only an individual council member's right to add an item on the agenda, it is any community member's right to request an agenda be put on the council, to request an agenda item be put in front of the council. So as far as I remember how, roles of elected officials work and that of city staff, it's not staff developing rules and establishing policies that govern the council actions. It's quite the opposite. It's us as an elected body establishing the policy and the rules that staff implement. And so I think in your explanation, you got things maybe a bit confused.
Who do you think is going to add it to the agenda? If it's not you, then who is it going to be?
It should be anyone in the community that has a desire and an interest in addressing the council. I think if you query the League of Minnesota Cities and other organizations that help cities effectively run local government, it will be made pretty clear that anyone in the community has that right.
If I could, is my mic working? I'm green.
It's
It's orange, this is green.
Yeah, it's not working.
not working.
Can you? Daniel?
It's done on purpose.
Need spare.
While you're addressing your mic issue, the other question I have is, why is only one person allowed to speak? Where did that rule come from? When was that decided? That we're now limiting only one person to address the council on a particular issue?
That is the role of the mayor. The mayor presides over the meeting, and we have like I said, we've already heard 4 hours, almost 4 hours of testimony about disc golf all year.
Which isn't
and
enough.
I don't, it's not enough.
No, it is not enough.
When is enough?
Well, you tell me. When the residents in the community at large were not given a single opportunity before any activity took place in their backyards. Zero outreach whatsoever. And so now, yeah, you tell me when is enough enough.
Councilman Maroney, go ahead and state what you were going to say.
Well, to cap on the who's allowed to speak, I actually reached out on another agenda item, this was a few years ago, to the League of Minnesota Cities asking, when does a public have the right to speak? And technically, the only time that they have the right to speak is at a public hearing. As a council, we don't even have to have an open forum. There is no need for the public, there's no legal binding for a public citizen to be able to speak unless it is a public hearing. So that is by the League of Minnesota. It's up to the council to allow and the mayor to run the meeting as such. Going back to the question of why has it been over a year before a petition has been in front of us, if we pause and think about it, we have discussed it. It didn't finally get approved until June was when it was finally approved. We did pause. We sent it back to Parks. We asked for clarification if this is still the best use of the land. We had the final vote in June. So for us to say it hasn't been there, it has. The disc golf discussion has been dated back to 2013 at public meetings. We paused completely in 2023. It was moved forward in March of 2022. That's when the bulldozers did start tearing down trees, and yes, we've admitted that that was a poor communication, a failure at communication to alert residents that that was happening. But in 2022, it started. That's when the construction started. We heard some comments throughout the 2022. At that time, Mayor Rogenkamp was running the meetings. We heard from public, and it was decided to continue moving forward. In 2023, we had 3 new elected officials. We paused everything on the disc golf course. We redesigned a hole because it was sought after. We invited residents coming in forward to meet with Administrator Chansky to discuss the alternatives or compromises. One of those items was to either remove hole number 5 or to realign it. We did realign it. 4 members of the community came in to talk with Administrator Chansky on compromises. So for you to say it has not been, it has. This is the first time I believe we have an official petition in front of us on the packet. That may be a correct thing. I want to say maybe that actually a copy of a petition was in another packet in 2022 as well to stop the development. There's even a postcard sent out by I do not know to the entire White Birch 15 and 16, as far as I'm aware of, to encourage people to contact city to cease the development in 2022, which the city received 0 feedback to cease it. So you're asking, why is this the first time? It's not the first time.
Well, yeah, I guess I'm not sure that I followed entirely with that, Mike. And clearly, it's okay that we get to a point of agreeing to disagree. I think the thing that can't be ignored is the residents nor the community at large were even aware, even knew, had heard about the expansion of the disc golf course. That's a problem. It still hasn't been fully addressed. We can say we've given all kinds of time and hours have been spent and this has been done. It doesn't take the place of or ignore the fact that this is still clearly an issue. And it's going to continue to be an issue. I can't help but to feel, and I mentioned this, I spoke to this very clearly, again, nearly a year ago. This being one of the first items in front of the council at the time. How is it that you take an outlot in a legally recorded subdivision dedicated to the public, intended to be preserved as open space in perpetuity, and now take that and convert it into a park, zone it as a park, and establish a park amenity in residents' backyards?
So we've already gone down this. We've already, nope.
I am
This
not
is
done.
my meeting.
I
This
am
is my,
not
we are going
done.
to go back to the reason that we're here tonight. We have already discussed this. We have spent hours discussing this, hours.
Case in point as to why people feel that
We have
a lot of
spent
this is landing on deaf
hours
ears.
discussing this.
Okay.
What has been brought before us tonight is whole removal. I would like to please stick with that as the agenda item, because we have already gone down this in multiple meetings, and I would like to keep us on track. Otherwise, we're going to go down another rabbit hole that we've already gone down. So I would like to please keep it on track with whole removal.
Well, what I was getting at is there was an analogy used at a park and rec meeting in October of this year, explaining, in effect, how you look at how land is being used in this city. And it was focused on park, of course.
Councilman Scott,
And there
I've
were-
asked you to please keep this on the item that we're here to discuss.
And it is on the expansion of the disc golf course.
Talking about whole removal, which is the purpose of what has been
My
brought.
point is getting to the whole idea of whole removal and then some.
Okay, then
If
make a
I'm
motion.
allowed-
If you would like to have this done, please make a motion to
What
have
I
it
would
done.
love to see done, which should have been done to begin with, is the disc golf course not even be within a residential neighborhood. Because what was mentioned at the Park and Rec meeting is you wouldn't think of people establishing themselves in a baseball field having a picnic, right? It's a baseball field. I mean, it would be absurd. It just wouldn't make any sense, right? It would be incompatible with the development of a baseball field and intended to play baseball. And yet we have in a residential neighborhood, right, a use like disc golf, expanded use of disc golf, that's wholly incompatible.
Do you
It
have a
doesn't
motion
belong.
for me?
Does not
Do
belong.
you have a motion for me?
So if the analogy in that context works at a park and rec meeting, the same argument should apply to it not belonging where it's currently constructed. It needs to be removed.
I would like to
In its
have other
entirety,
council
and I will make a
members-
motion
Can you
to that
please?
effect.
Yes. I would like to hear from other council members, please.
After the petition was received, Councilmember Maroney approached me, and what we decided was we would meet together and try and come to some type of compromise and consensus. That did not happen. You know, going back, I don't want to go back. I mean, we've spent so many hours, but I've always struggled with the expansion disc golf course. There was never a separate public hearing on it. It was included in, I believe it was December 2021 budget. It was mentioned in the budget memo. And that there was never direct door mailings to the residents that abutted the disc golf. So enough said about that. In the meetings with Michael, he has some excellent suggestions. And I think this is a lesson learned as Parks and Rec specifically rewrites the master plan, that they need to take into consideration that the majority of the land around this city, it's all in neighborhoods. It's easier to work with residents than to have hearings, have notifications. But with that being said, once discussion's over, I will make a motion to remove holes 4 through 12.
Yeah, we've had hours of discussion on this, so I think, and we've heard from people that really like the disc golf course and people that do not. I have heard since, the back nine, or whatever you call it, front nine, back nine, since the new 18 holes was opened, stories on both sides. I've heard of people being harassed when they were playing disc golf. And that's not from anybody that's on, like, the disc golf, whatever it is, the
League or?
league that they're on, sorry. It wasn't that. It was somebody that just was out there playing disc golf. And I've also gotten emails from you, Bill, and from the curtains and things like that on issues that you've seen behind your homes. So, but again, the amenity that we approved was for the city as a whole. I know that there are residents that abut the amenity that are impacted by that. But in my opinion, and it's always, I guess, since we've been discussing it, I've never thought that removing the holes was the best way to go at this point. I am in favor of whatever compromises can be made, but I don't think the compromise is removing holes 4 through 12. I don't think that's a compromise, in my opinion. I think, I agree, the communication was bad, and it wasn't up to par. We even have on the agenda today more ways to address more communication to the residents because there wasn't enough communication for City Hall. So I don't know, we're talking about doing direct mailers now, quarterly, to get information out to residents. It's hard. Even if we do the mailers, that doesn't mean anybody's going to read it. So I understand the concerns. I understand that people are going to drink in public places. They're going to throw beer cans in garbages that are like at a beach, at a park, on a disc golf course. That doesn't mean they're drunk or being belligerent or that it's okay. I'm not promoting that. I'm not saying it's fine to do. I'm just saying we can't control every single person. And I don't think we can label everybody that plays disc golf course as a bad person, or that we should remove the amenity because there's maybe one bad actor. Like, we wouldn't remove a park because, or like a gymnasium or a ballpark because of, a few bad actors. So I would not be in favor of removing the holes at this point.
Thank you, Councilman Ball.
One of the things as a council we have to decide on and discuss is how would we apply it to another amenity? If we had people complaining that the public beach was a nuisance, that the residents around it, would the residents surrounding the public beach have more merit to close down the public beach? When we look at holes 4 through 12, and as it's asked for, it's because this is the closest proximity to the current developed homes. As more development comes, will we be asked to remove more holes? This goes back to Mr. Scott's point of not having the entire course there at all. And that's not what's being asked today. It's being removed 4 through 12, although Mr. Scott said he might make a motion to remove the entire course.
I don't think that's what I stated.
I apologize, then that's not what Mr. Scott did say. There was also discussion on, or we've received communications regarding ordinances not being followed, smoking, drinking, trash cans being filled with litter of that nature that should not be allowed there. We also have signs for speed limit signs. People often speed. And we don't close the road because we have bad actors. We don't limit people from not having any alcoholic drink, and I'm not promoting all drinking and driving, but the state law is .008. It's not .0, there's leeway. And what I'm trying to get to is just because we have bad actors doesn't mean the entire thing should be gone away with. I think there's more that can be done, and I think that was potentially the compromise that we're looking for, the suggestions that we're looking for. So yeah, that's what I have to say on this right now.
And I kind of want to piggyback off of that because I do think, I drive past the elementary school every morning. And there is a Breezy Point police officer sitting there half the time. And knowing that, people slow down, okay? That doesn't prevent people from speeding through a school zone, but it's the visibility. And I've mentioned this before where, not everything is black and white. Not every decision is black and white. We struggled to hire our last police officer, which is why we made a decision to increase our wages to attract more talent. Peter is sitting over there right now. We were able to hire our seventh officer. And, one of the things that we discussed is, more patrol through the disc golf course, right? So again, someone could never see a police officer and think, oh, I'm just gonna drink this out in the open because no one ever comes through here. Well, if consistently every weekend or whenever now you have more patrol, people are gonna be more hesitant to make some of those choices. So I have never been in favor, and I came into this position not even knowing that disc golf was an issue. I think there are actually a lot of residents that don't know that disc golf is an issue, just like they wouldn't know the brush pile is an issue or the beach. Like, usually the proximity of that amenity tends to be consistent with the fact that if it's not close to your home, you're probably not going to know about it. You're not going to know it's an issue. So I came in with no agenda, not knowing anything, and spending months and hours looking into how we got here. And at the end of the day, I didn't feel that just removing and setting a precedence, right? We don't want to set a precedence that just says if one council comes in and we're going to go and find another council member to run for council because we want them to stop this. That's not a good reason to run for office, and I do feel like that's what happens sometimes in city government. It's not good to run for office just to achieve one agenda item, but it does happen. And so I don't want to set any precedence that says, okay, because you go out and petition and have someone run for a role, now all of a sudden you're going to undo everything that a previous council did. I don't think that sets a good example. I think, in fact, what we need to do is I feel like we are trying to do is come together and say, what can we do to reduce the amount of burden that these public amenities could have on the residents closest to them. That's what we need to do, and we have not yet been given the opportunity to do that. I wanted to expand the Parks and Rec for a reason. I wanted them to be able to come together, to be able to figure out how to reduce some of these issues. And we have sat here for hours, 5-hour council meetings. Like, we have listened to residents. Just because we don't agree with you doesn't mean we don't listen. So we are sitting here tonight now at this point to decide whether or not holes should be removed, whether or not it's holes 4 through 12, or a couple holes, or no holes. But I think there's a lot more to consider than what necessarily is presented in this petition in front of us.
Well, I'll make the motion to remove holes 4 through 12 from the disc golf course, the expansion.
Do I have a second? Right. So that motion, is there anything else that we could do, or does any other council member feel that there is anything else?
Madam Mayor, Mr. Jensen did allude that he and I met. I've spent a lot of time thinking about potential solutions, compromises. I've printed one for each council member to read if they choose to follow along, and I'll read these out loud. And what I'd like to do is bounce them off the council, and we can certainly break down each bullet point as a separate motion and recommendation. But I'm going to read them all at first to go through them all. So these are some of these suggestions, and these are some ideas that have been presented to us in a form of an email or request in previous correspondences, both from neighbors and I apologize. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, Councilmember. Are you cool if I put this on the document camera? Is that okay
Sure,
with you?
yeah.
Deb, if you want to hit the document camera, that'd be great.
You might have to slide it up and down as, no.
You can just start, by the way.
Okay, sorry.
She'll handle it.
So my first suggestion that I have here is moving the T-pad number 6 further to the north by a minimum of 50 feet, which is near the boulders and trees along the left of the fairway. Second bullet point, any target or basket that is within 75 feet of a current developed property line at the request of the current January 2024 property owner, that target and basket to be removed between October 10th and 20th, the target date being October 15th, and to be replaced May 10th through the 20th, again, target date being May 15th. Bullet point 3, place basket silencers on baskets within 100 feet of a 2024 developed property line. Next, signs to be placed for every 35 feet along the property line of any current developed property line along the entire disc golf course. And at the time of any future residence being developed, at the time of certificate of occupancy is granted, those signs shall be placed. And those signs should be reading private property, no trespassing. Violators can be banned from the course. Parks and Rec has been deciding on the route to recommend for advertising to access the disc golf. So speed limit signs to be erected on any path that Parks and Rec finalizes for that directional signage to the course. Temporary restrooms to be provided at the new parking lot, the maintenance parking lot, which is by hole number 1 as of today on the Legacy course, or number 6 and 13 after realignment on the Legacy course. And at basket 10 of the expansion course, utilizing the 20-foot easement that we have there to place or access that temporary restroom. To place signs encouraging being respectful and courteous in a residential neighborhood. Those will be at the start of each 18 and any T-pad within 125 feet of any developed property line being every other hole. That sign can read residential quiet zone. Please be respectful and courteous. To have Parks and Rec continue to develop rules of play and use of that land. They are considering re-signing all city parks, so this will be part of that consideration for the Parks and Rec Department to continue discussion on. Allow Parks and Rec to sign the course that violators of rules can be banned and or fined. No glow rounds allowed. For those unaware, I believe one course in Brainerd does a glow-in-the-dark type round. That is not to be allowed. Posted hours of park to be posted from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Memorial Day through Labor Day. The reason being is there's more daylight during those summer hours, and 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. all other dates. And then law enforcement to patrol the parking lot on a regular patrol schedule and utilizing the city's UTV, community policing, and education of parties on the course, gaining access there. While this is not necessarily needed to be a motion, but some other items to consider and ask parks to continue to work on and have completed by the end of 2025. Have the city finalize a whole sponsorship funding capability. Allow Parks and Rec to continue to work on event permit for 2024. Finalize permit recommendations for council consideration. Work on the trail from the new parking lot to the Legacy Course number 14, or after renumbering number 1. Renumber the Legacy Course, 14 becomes 1, 1 becomes 6, and so on. Close the Legacy parking lot. Create a map of the entire complex and course. Work on a plan to replace the mat T-pads with cement T-pads that are found at the new course. Obtain trash cans that can be found at every other hole. And continue to encourage other uses, including pavilion, picnic, playground, or other ideas that parks may have for that property. One being such as snowshoeing is on a discussion point right now. So these are some of the considerations that I've taken into thought process during the conversations that Mr. Jensen and I have had, reviewing previous emails that we've received and correspondences.
Okay, thank you so much. So first off, I want to say this. I have not seen this document. I had no idea what Councilman Maroney was presenting tonight, but I'm going to say thank you. This is exactly what we are looking for from council members, committee members. This is homework. This is time. This is presentation. This is communication. This is what we expect moving forward. And I really thank you for presenting this, because this takes time. This is not just showing up to a meeting and making decisions and looking at issues, right? This is how we lead moving forward. So I'm very proud of you. Thank you so much for presenting this. Thank you, seriously.
Maybe according to you, it's the way that things should be and need to be approached. But I tend to be of the belief, and I ran for elected office to be a voice for those that supported me to hold elected office. I'm not up here having all the answers. I don't have a magic wand to wave. It's about, yes, considering what council members have to bring forward, but it's also listening to the community as a whole. And I don't care what you do at this point, how you characterize things. The truth of the matter is people weren't given any opportunity. There was zero notice in any of this
We've gone
taking
down
place.
this. We know
It's
this.
in an inappropriate area. It's got no business being there. And I'm at a point, and I usually don't go there very often, but as a council member, I am putting the rest of you on constructive notice. We have issues, and you don't need to look at me that way.
I don't like you were so disrespectful to me. You've been disrespectful since day one. I don't understand
really?
where the disrespect come from. I don't.
Well, give me some examples.
Here's the deal. We are going to move forward.
Some examples, please.
I am not going to do that to you.
Do not say that I've been disrespectful to you, and don't follow it up with examples.
I'm not going to do that in public. I have them, but I will not say them. So I really would like to focus on some of the solutions that will give some residents some ease. We understand that where this process started, there were things that were not done the way that maybe we would have done them today. But I would like for you to please be a part of the solution. I was giving him credit for.
I have attempted time and again
me. Do not.
to be part of the solution.
I run this. Do not interrupt me.
Okay.
It is disrespectful. We are trying to come up with solutions. It is not easy to come up here on a council meeting and make decisions off the top of our heads sometime. So we have to sit up here and work together to do that. And it's not easy. I understand that. But there's no room for disrespect.
Well,
I don't know. I would please.
people in certain
please-
ways get what they
Okay,
are entitled to.
Time out. I run this meeting. I would really like to hear from other council members on what Councilman Maroney has presented to us.
You know what, and I'm not going to allow
Do not-
you to
no,
violate
this
my
is my-
First Amendment rights
This
of
is my
freedom of
meeting.
speech.
This is my meeting, Councilman Scott.
Your meeting, huh?
It is my meeting. Please stop interrupting me. If you want to run the meetings, you can run for mayor. I would like to hear from the other council members, please.
I think all of these ideas are great. I would make a motion to approve all of the bulleted items on the top and for the Parks and Rec Committee to discuss all of the other items on the bottom. I think they're all great. I think they would all be helpful. I think they would all make things better. And if they're not, at least we're trying something and we're trying to make things better. We're trying for a compromise to make things better. And I'm sorry if we all can't agree, but that's my opinion.
Can I clarify, ma'am? Is that an actual formal motion?
That's a formal motion.
And so I just wanted to clarify, so the motion from Councilmember Ball is to approve the bulleted recommendations and direct Parks and Recreation to work on the additional items.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, can we discuss, please, Councilman?
I think the recommendations are good. This, again, in my opinion, for anything that comes out of the new master plan, we have to make communication a top priority and involve the residents, which we've said we'll do. But it has to be done. And it has to change, as Rebecca pointed out. There's a topic on communications, which I think is excellent. I think what the Assistant Administrator Eck came up with makes perfect sense. It's a work in progress. I think it was an eye-opener in the communication with the proposed City Hall open house, but we can fix it. So I do agree with the recommendations that Michael made.
I would like to add too, since the very beginning, I've always been in favor of potentially removing holes. And that was initially why we had sent residents to go work with Administrator Chansky, was to do that for their own homes. And there wasn't a motion made to do that in May. And it is, again, it's not easy to sit up here and just come up with motions in the midst of some of the chaos. And I think that, again, like what I have appreciated, at least in this case, is the amount of time that was put into this. And I do think that we have a lot of work that we can still do. But that doesn't mean in the future that, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We have to try it. And sometimes it does take that trial and error, and not everything is just going to work the first time. So I like all the things that have been presented, and I think we do need to continue to act on ways to make this the best that we can for the community.
I would just add that I think it's incredibly telling that, because I had requested for the disc golf course to be on the agenda last month. We had two council members, in Jensen and Maroney, who were going to come together and come up with a plan for certain modifications and changes. And as I believe, as Councilmember Jensen mentioned early, they didn't come to an agreement. I think that speaks volumes to the overall situation as a whole. I'm going to go back to a comment that I started to make before. As a council member, as an elected official, this council needs to understand that we have constructive notice from the community that there are life safety issues at play with the use of the disc golf course in a residential area. We've received emails time after time of pictures of any number of things, of police reports being filed, things documented that are wholly inappropriate and very few people in this community would tolerate in their backyard. We have constructive notice. I am, for whatever it's worth, absolving myself from any responsibility whatsoever of any future issues that arise from the use of that property as a disc golf course, period.
Any other discussion?
None for me.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, we will go ahead and move on. Since we already amended the consent agenda, do I have approval to approve the consent agenda minus 8F, which has been moved to 9A?
So moved.
Second?
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on to 9A, which is the fee schedule. Mr. Chansky, if you would like to go through that.
Well, I guess I'll just hand it over to Councilmember Scott, who pulled it, if he had some questions regarding the proposed fee schedule.
I do. After having looked at the information in the packet, I'm just curious on page 32. It identifies or seems to make reference to when our city staff and equipment would be rented out, essentially, and I'm just interested in knowing what are some examples or how does that work of when we charge for city equipment and city staff to perform on that equipment.
So the primary thing that this, primary thing right now is the city, the Public Works Department plows the airport runway. So that's a service that we've been providing at the airport for how many years now, Joe?
Probably 8,
Yeah.
at least.
And that was something, I think the airport that about 8 or so years ago came to the city and asked would we be willing to provide that service. So we use that, the equipment fee schedule is how we charge the airport for that service. But that's the only service we provide right now.
If I may add to that, the other part of the reason why we actually developed the fee schedule for the all other items was if another entity was looking to get assistance from us, this would be essentially the reimbursement schedule. So if Pequot Lakes had a natural disaster and needed some assistance, this is our rate.
That is correct. So that'd be the other reason we would use it if someone else needed to ask for assistance or use of our equipment.
Okay, thank you for that. And then on page 27, which I believe is part of the memo to the council, I'm just wondering when it comes to different increases in what we're charging for various things in the community, specifically the increases that are proposed, is there actual information that's kept that document or otherwise justify why those items are in fact being increased? So
regarding the Columbaria, we do increase that fee, generally goes up every single year. That's the city's, when it comes to Columbaria, the city pays to have the etching for the names. And so we've been looking at the costs. That increased, like last year, I think it went up, Deb will correct me, she's not in the room, she'll probably yell at me, but it's like, it went up like $20, or actually, I think it was $32 last year. The year before that, it was like 13. So that cost kind of ebbs and flows, so we're just looking at what has been the average. So last year, it went up, I think we increased it $5, but the fee went up $32. We didn't know exactly what it was going to go up. So we're just trying to stay in that ballpark, our goal really is just to break even. So that was the reason we landed on $20 for the Columbaria. As for E911 signs, again, that's based off of the cost that we incur. So the signs coming from the Crow Wing County Highway Department, the cost of the actual sign, the cost of a replacement sign, the posts, and labor to install those posts. So that's kind of where we came up with. We're seeing those costs to us go up as well. So that's why we settled on increasing those slightly.
Appreciate that. Yeah, that's what I was wondering about. I was fully anticipating that it was based upon some actual cost that's being borne by the city, but just wanted to make sure that was.
Yeah, these are, again, just so people are aware, these are things that we essentially, our goal is just to break even.
Okay. Those were the questions I had.
One more clarification point too, in regards to Mr. Chansky, when you notified that we plow the airport, that's a last item to be plowed. You know, city streets take priority, but one of the benefits to the community is having a plowed runway is that if air care needs to land, it's cleared out, and that was one of the bigger contenders that kind of drove us to assist with that. Granted, air care can land anywhere, yes, but it is a convenient central location outside of traffic conditions. So that was one of the other compelling reasons why we developed that fee schedule 8 years ago.
Yep, thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve that?
I'll make a second.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we will move on to new business.
Okay. Item A, Madam Mayor, member of the council. So we received a request from Mike Went with North Central Bass. They're planning on hosting a bass fishing tournament on Sunday, July 14th on Pelican Lake. And they will be using, as part of their plan for that tournament, using the public launch as well as the resort. And as part of their, to get approval from the DNR for that event, they have to get approval from the DNR, they have to have a parking plan. And so Mr. Went approached the city. I said, you know, I requested that he's give a formal letter because they would like to use the city's overflow parking here to the east of the ball field and dedicate that list that as the parking for that event. They anticipate around 50 boats for that event on Sunday, July 14th. And so because that area was going to be dedicated, kind of designed as part of a permit to the DNR, I requested that they submit as a formal request to the city council to give them authorization to list that, because that is public property, as parking for that event. I don't believe Mr. Went is here this evening to speak.
Okay, does anyone have any additional questions?
None for me.
Is this something that's been done in other years? The city?
I think this is the first time they've done this event. But like we do the very same thing with the airport days. We have them every year come and do a request to shut down or put airport road to one lane. So this is a common procedure of if someone wants to use a shutdown or use a public amenity for a event like that, that we just ask them to request that the council approve it.
I make a motion to approve the request to use city property for event parking on Sunday, July 14th.
Second.
For the bass tournament.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we will move on. I am gonna actually let Councilman Jensen start us off on this committee appointment for planning and zoning.
I thought you were going
Oh, no,
to, cemetery,
yes, so we had discussed the
committee assignments.
yes. Because I think you made a couple really good points about this, and I had also, I think that it.
As far as committee assignments, I sit on Cemetery Commission as the council liaison, and I also sit on the Planning and Zoning. For the committee assignment on Planning and Zoning, 99% of what goes on is conditional use permit approval and variances. it has, having a council member there, the only function you provide is review of minutes. I know it's been tradition. I don't necessarily think sitting there for a couple hours, not being able to speak, because for me to speak, I need to speak on behalf of the entire council. I can't do that on that committee. Now, cemetery committee, yes, there's been a lot going on. There will be a lot this year, but I think we need to revisit, and we've talked about this in a workshop, that attend council meetings, have a standing workshop, a date to be determined amongst council members. If you need it, we proceed with it. If you don't, you cancel it. But that's my thought. And personnel and road committee never met last year. I don't know as if there is need, for those, and I think that was part of it. Now that we have a full-time city planner, I think staff can keep council updated, and council members can attend any of the meetings we want. The only thing, per Administrator Chansky's point, is we need to make sure there's not a quorum there.
Or I should say, or at least if there's going to be a quorum, we have adequate time to notice that.
And I also want to thank Councilman Jensen as well for bringing this to my attention. This is a prime example of what I was discussing with everyone earlier. He had concerns. He called me with those concerns about, sitting as a committee member. We discussed it. I went to Administrator Chansky. We put it on the agenda. I didn't make those appointments. Again, this is why we need to communicate with one another prior to council meetings. If there's issues, communication, because then we can put that on the agenda and we can address it in the form that we need to do that. And so thank you for bringing that to the attention, because I do think that is the main reason that I have it on the agenda tonight, is because of the concerns that he had brought, which is why I wanted to discuss that with the rest of the council. Considering now that we have our workshops monthly, I think the real question on this is, do we want the committee assignments? Do we keep them? Do we make them mandatory? Do we make them optional? How do we want to do that to be respectful of everyone's time, in order to, make it as effective as possible throughout the year? So I'm hoping you guys could give more insight on what you guys would want to do about the committee assignments and what you think is best for the council, and how we relay information back at meetings.
I was curious about joint powers, if that was even possible. I mean,
So,
or
yeah,
can you
I was going
change
to
the
say joint
rules?
powers, that there are two joint powers, and the Heartland Cable have to have an appointee. So joint powers is part of that joint powers agreement. There will be, the mayor is a member of the joint powers. One of the council members there should be an alternate. And the same thing with the Heartland Cable. One of the members of the Heartland Cable Commission is a council member. They meet once a year. Councilmember Maroney's been sitting the last few years. He can speak to what kind of commitment that is.
It's a very minimal commitment, but the Heartland Cable Commission does sponsor some scholarships, and so basically it's to vote on who gets the scholarship.
Yeah, I think one of the, the two biggest, in my opinion, really are the park and rec and the planning. And I think, with Peter here too, we have plans with regards to planning to update our ordinances completely, our zoning, and now we have a full-time planning and zoning person here. Welcome. Is it something that we need a council member at these meetings? Like, what is the best way to relay? How do we want to do that?
It seems to me that we would be fine now that we have a full-time P&Z administrator, that he could take over some of that role if there was something that needed to be relayed to us. Parks and Rec, I feel like it's, in recently, because there's been more discussion there, I think it's been all of our responsibility to review those meetings. Now they're recorded. We all have an opportunity to go back and listen to those, and I have done that when there's been a topic that we've needed to be apprised of. So I don't know that it helps to have somebody there that can't say anything, just to observe. If they can, if we all know we need to rewatch things if it's appropriate for meetings. But.
I agree with most of the meetings being recorded now and posted on YouTube. We all have the ability to go watch and review. I think it'd be something of a benefit that staff can do a synopsis of the meeting. And if there is an item of consideration to be reviewed, they call it out and say you might want to review said minutes or said time on the video. So I think with the digital era, all of us can be abreast of what's going on at any time of any of those three committees.
One thing on the subject of minutes, and this was pointed out by the Sheldon Cohen, the minutes need to be more detailed for basically all committees. It's a tool, I mean, if it's covered more in depth, residents have the ability to skim and look over the meeting minutes as opposed to having to, go through the entire meeting. They can do it, you can fast forward and do things, but I do think, minutes need to improve. And it's for record. And really where this came to light is when Councilmember Maroney rebuilt kind of the timeline for the disc golf. It was pretty much one sentences based off of minutes. So, I think that needs to improve.
And with this on the agenda, did you also want us to potentially vote on moving to 2 meetings? You want to go ahead and discuss?
Yeah, so
your
as I put
email?
in my memo, pretty much everything highlighted in the attached resolution is kind of what we're looking for council to fill. So, with the liaisons, if your intention is to remove those. So the goal here at the end of this conversation is to adopt a resolution with a decision on these yellow areas. So if your intention is to remove the liaisons, when we adopt the resolution, to make that motion clear that you're removing the committee liaison, the 3 committee liaison positions. Joint Powers Board, Councilmember Ball has been sitting on that for the last 2 years. Per the Joint Powers Agreement, the mayor is always on it, but then the council members serve a 2-year term. So someone, either Councilmember Ball can be reappointed or someone else needs to be appointed.
Those are quarterly.
To serve that. Those are quarterly now.
Not monthly.
Not monthly.
Not monthly.
Also, an alternate member should be appointed. So if that council member or the mayor cannot attend, they still have a quorum, because one of the things with the Joint Powers Agreement is a quorum. It's a 6-member board. So a quorum is 4, but they have to have 5 to vote. So they have a meeting quorum of 4, but a voting quorum of 5. So if there are 2 members down, they can meet and discuss, but they can't take any action on anything. So that's the importance of the alternate member. And then someone, again, to serve on the Heartland Cable. So those those positions we're looking to be filled. And then, again, the council meetings, Madam Mayor, if you want me just to speak to that right now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Again, I sent a memo out to the council earlier in December. I included it in the packet. Over the last few months, I've seen, over the last year, our council meetings have been quite lengthy. I've received comments from council members about it. Looking at it from our staff's perspective, what we can, trying to figure out how can we help kind of facilitate meetings, short meetings. One of the main ways is to move to bi-monthly meetings, so meeting twice a month. In the packet, I just listed a bunch of different, that I was able to identify of advantages to moving to twice a month. In that we can, as staff, we can strategically schedule agenda items to reduce the length of meetings. So, when we meet once a month, pretty much everything you see on agenda today is something that needs to be decided today, because we don't meet again for 4 more weeks. If you meet twice a month, then it's one of those things where we can say, okay, this agenda is starting to look long. This item can be shifted. This item can wait 2 more weeks. We have the ability to do that. More time to consider issues. One of the prime ones that came to my mind was when you approved the Questica proposal for the budget software. Would have liked a presentation, but there was a time associated with that, where if we kicked it to December, we would have missed a pricing window. So you approved it and then got a presentation later. Well, if we met twice, you could have moved it to the second meeting of the month, still made the presentation of the financing window, and gotten your presentation prior to making that decision. So that is a benefit. You know, I just threw in there because I see it from different cities do different things where you can meet at different times. Both meetings don't have to occur at the exact same day or exact same time of the day. And then the other thing is that you could again designate meetings for certain topics. You know, if you wanted to say all items that require a public hearing on the first meeting, or again, it gives you that flexibility to kind of decide what is done, what's discussed at each meeting. So again, there's multiple different opportunities to bi-monthly meetings. You know, some of the stuff we were actually just talking about it earlier today with some of the stuff we have coming down, looking at, okay, when are we going to get when do we think we can get a RFP for the zoning code before the council or the streets plan? It's one of those things where, okay, we got to draft it, council approve it, put it out on the street, get proposals back, evaluate them, bring it back to council. Where once a month, you're now looking at a 2 to 3 month window before we can have where we can have someone on board to do a project. Where if you meet twice a month, now it's more like a month and a half window. It cuts the window down. So that was just some of the benefits. Workshops, again, as I was already kind of brought up, you know, the council seemed to enjoy those workshops. So one of the things regarding workshops, you could continue to do what you do now. Again, these are just some of the options I've come up with. This is not exhaustive. Continue what you do now, where you just kind of call them as needed. You could schedule workshops to take place before regularly scheduled council meeting. I know the city of Baxter does that, where if they have a workshop, they do it like their meetings are at, I think 7. Their workshops at like 5:30 or something like that. City of Brainerd, they don't have workshops, but their committee meetings they hold right before the meeting. I'll say one of the benefits of that is it gives you that hard deadline. Like if you have a workshop at 5 before a 6:30 meeting, it's probably 1-2 items max you discuss, and it's kind of we want to be done by 6 or 6:15 so we can have that break before the council meeting starts. Or you can just schedule it for another day of the month. Crow Wing County Board does that, where they have second and fourth Tuesdays are the county board meetings, the third Tuesday committee of a whole, which is essentially a workshop. So different options there to also consider. And again, with workshops, those are also always ones that if you want to schedule it, I think there's a benefit to having locked in so you all can put it on your calendars and we don't have to, we need a workshop, when is everybody available? And then if we don't need it, we cancel it. It's always, from a public meeting perspective, it's always easier to cancel than schedule. So those are just, again, so some recommendations we wanted to put out there to try to help facilitate discussion and give you time to consider items and try to potentially make agendas not as lengthy. So
I like the idea of 2 meetings a month to cut down. I would not be able to do it beforehand just because I sit on the Women's Shelter Board, so I'd be coming from a meeting the first Monday of the month. Otherwise, I think that if we could do a consistent time, at least like once a month for workshops, where we if we need a workshop, this is like the date and time. I'm kind of open, but I do think, 2 meetings a month could potentially work, but I don't know how everyone else's schedules are.
When I read through this suggestions, I think the goal was to make them shorter, and adding the workshops ahead just kind of prolonged. Granted, it's productive. One of the things trying to meld the ideas together was potentially continue with the first Monday of the month at 6:30 for city council meetings, and then set a standing workshop meeting, perhaps the third Monday of the month, third Tuesday. I know we've met on Tuesdays for workshops before, but create a standing workshop meeting. And it can be canceled if there is no agenda items, but those are the presentations, whatever else we have to be filled in on. But I was kind of leaning towards remaining one city council meeting and setting a standing workshop.
I agree with Michael. My fear is with 2 council meetings, then if you have a workshop before, you're going to be there for 5 hours and then 4 hours on a meeting, and that's too long. But agendas are going to get, Bushman Road's going to be voted on, by May? Then after that, it's not going to consume a lot of the council's time. Will be updates. City Hall, same thing, that has not been approved, but once the direction is finalized, okay, there's less that's going to be on the agenda. But I agree with Michael.
I think one thing we could potentially do as well to cut down on council meetings is have the presentations that don't require any action to be done at the workshops.
Yes, that's a
So
good
like
idea.
if, you know, like with the chamber and the lodging tax or with, you know, the commission, like if there are informative things, not having them on the council meeting, but having them at the workshop. So then, and having those workshops filmed. Because I do think that that is gonna, we talk about a lot of really great things, a lot of really informational things that I think the public would really get a lot of benefit from about how we come to our decisions instead of just being here and this is the decision. So I mean, I'm open to either. I think at this point, I would like at least one workshop scheduled a month. And if we don't need it, we don't need it. But I think there are ways that we can cut down our meetings.
I mean, I think with the amount of things that we have on our plate this year, we have to have a workshop. You can't thoroughly discuss every aspect of the issues, whether it be Bushman Road, City Hall. You know, it's needed to have the workshops, and they're open to the public.
Well, and we've talked for the number of information you get, like on a city hall, it's not fair to try to read that here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, not read it and discuss it
Right,
here.
right.
In what should probably be a 2-hour meeting, to be honest. I mean, some of what I appreciate, Mayor Zierden, is that over time, you know, I think we're getting better about controlling the meetings, but I think some of it does come down to controlling the length of the discussion on some items that, you know, maybe don't need 20 minutes of discussion. And I appreciate comments and discussing things, but there are some items that don't need that much time. So I do have a concern if we had another meeting that would be 4 hours too. And so, yeah, we would end up with, so I agree with you, Councilman Jensen, that we'd probably end up with 2 4-hour meetings, unfortunately, at this point. So I think one meeting, doing a better job of controlling, you know, the length of discussion and maybe getting to motions quicker, but, and then having the workshops, I mean, should help, should be already helping, but I'm certainly okay with trying to set up a time that works for everyone.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I don't know that adding a second regular city council meeting a month is the approach. I have quite often actually thought, you know, is simply what's in front of the council just too much? You know, why are things constituting quite a lengthy agenda? You can go month after month and see items that require no action, and they're part of our regular council meeting. It just adds time. And, you know, a lot of things, honestly, that are in front of the council that, you know, aren't on any kind of specific time frame or need for a decision to be made, and yet we're piling all these things month after month on the agendas, and it's just adding to the length of the meeting. I like the idea of, again, not creating 2 regular council meetings a month if we need to call a workshop or even, frankly, a special council meeting. You know, why couldn't we approach it that way? Part of the concern that I would have too is just what hardship or barrier does it create for the public? You know, we establish another regular council meeting in the month. It's, you know, kind of requiring the public and those that need to be a part of the agenda discussion to potentially turn out at 2 meetings if that item is on both of those council agendas. And, you know, we added the budget forecast on the end of our meetings to really, I feel, do that very thing, to call out what's in front of us in the upcoming month and does it make sense? And I don't know that we've really engaged in enough conversation or really thought about the month coming up enough to say, is that simply too much? What are some things that we can hold over, you know, a month or so? So potentially even getting better as a group of thinking what's coming in front of us and is it needed to be on the next month's meeting agenda or not. Because I think oftentimes we just sort of default that, yeah, let's do it. And then all of a sudden we're running into a 5-hour meeting.
I think a monthly workshop, we could actually discuss the upcoming agenda. So then we can kind of say, is this what we want to see on the upcoming agenda? But then also then, if there are presentations, we can have them come to that workshop. So I think that.
Sure, the presenters would like that too.
Yeah, during the day, yeah.
Good idea,
They can get out of work, yeah.
The agenda items, like we know there are certain items that will take a long time to discuss. So, to that extent, like, let's limit the other things. And if we can, and if we can't, maybe we do need a special meeting or something to be called
Yeah,
to address
if needed,
those. But
that's an option.
It's just hard to, I think, again, we've already established that workshops are the best way for all of us to meet and discuss. So when, we are setting the agenda, again, we do the best, the staff does a great job. I meet with staff, but it's like, I don't necessarily have the full council to discuss it. And so again, it makes it hard with the open meeting laws and everything to really do a.
So what I'm hearing is a consensus to retain council meetings for the first Monday of the month at 6:30. Would that be correct so far?
Yes.
Okay, so then the next item was workshops, standing workshops. Do we want to schedule a standing workshop?
to me, I don't know, I was gonna say, like, I don't know, my schedule's all over the place always, so I don't know.
Can we think about it and then email Administrator
Yeah, that might
Chansky?
be
Can we do
better.
that where if we individually email you like our best times of the month, week, and see if there's some commonality? I think you sent us like,
He sent something like a calendar thing. Here's
Yeah.
where I'm
The
getting
survey,
Yeah,
basically
yeah.
we pick which dates.
Like, do you want to do that on a monthly basis, or you want to remove
I think
this
it'd
and
be
have
easier to
a
schedule
separate
it on a
resolution at
monthly
another
basis
time?
throughout the year.
See, for me, where I was going with it was to schedule a standing workshop.
Yes.
Because I can clear my schedule,
Right.
or at least try to. Sometimes work gets in the way. Priority is
Yeah.
employment. But that will happen for those of us that still work.
it's okay.
I'll defer to
One day
the rest
we'll
of
be
the
there.
council members.
That's why I'm suggesting of scheduling that standing workshop. In the past, it seemed like Tuesdays were working better. We could continue at an evening. We've done 3 or 3:30. And again, where my goal would be is if we set it for example, a 3:30 workshop, which is now going to be filmed and recorded and posted on YouTube for anybody to be able to catch up and recap on, is it's now going to be part of our schedule, part of our daily, monthly lives.
I like the 3:30 though, because with kids and sports and everything else, it does get.
I don't know if I can do a standing monthly meeting at 3:30.
Is there another time that?
I mean, I work till 5, so, I don't want to, on a regular basis, take PTO or be off from work at 3:30 monthly on the same day.
So 5:30, would it have to be a 5:30 or?
5 or.
I think it would be best if we just all went home and kind of looked at our calendars and
So what you're asking is for us to suggest to Mr. Chansky
Yeah.
on a set day with set timeframes, kind of open, choose first week, second, well, not first week, I'd recommend not doing that, but probably the third week, what day and
Yeah.
time frame would work for all of us? So can we adopt this resolution with that to be modified next month?
Yeah, it would just be a separate resolution.
Okay.
So you just not include workshop.
So do we have a consensus that we'll coordinate with Mr. Chansky on what would work with our personal schedules for a standing workshop starting in February? I wouldn't think that do we need a workshop this month?
We've got 2 already this month.
That's right, sorry. We do.
Yeah, we don't need any more, Michael.
So would that work with Mr. Chansky on recommendations for what that standing workshop would be starting February?
Well, what I'm hearing Rebecca saying is sort of the same situation that I have with work, is it's very difficult to commit to an additional meeting every month. I don't know, did I hear you correctly in that one?
Yeah, for me it is, just,
Well, and it is for me as well, so I feel like maybe we're talking about something different. And maybe that looks something like when we see a month where a workshop is needed for whatever the reasons, then, David can query the council as to availability and we can figure it out and get something coordinated.
I would like to not do it at a council meeting though, just because it does take time from the meeting, and I'd like to do it outside of the council meetings if that was the
and
case.
usually we have to look at schedules anyway, so.
Yeah.
So as soon as a workshop is identified as being needed, you can coordinate then and do the, but no standing workshop, schedule as needed, which may be every month, but may
Outside of
not.
meetings.
And
Hopefully it's not.
Well, it just makes the agenda forecast all the more important. It needs to be,
Yeah, I think that will
More
make a lot
accurate.
more sense than to,
yeah, and I'm fine with it. I mean, that's,
And how about the liaisons?
I would just soon do away with them and council members can attend. If needed, I'll still attend cemetery commission.
I would second that recommendation.
I'm fine with that.
So specifically, we're talking cemetery, parks, and planning.
Correct.
But you're going to still be on cemetery or just?
I mean, I'll just attend.
Okay.
Whether it's council member or citizen, I will attend those.
And in place of not having a council liaison, I really like the idea, and I forget what month it was or the approach that was taken where we had the chair of the Park and Rec Committee actually come and give the council an update on things that they feel are important for us to be aware of. I think if we can continue that, as an ongoing practice, that I think would kind of fill in some of the gaps otherwise of not having somebody on the council as a liaison.
Yeah, and I think
Peter,
they
will
would
you
be
be
able
there?
to speak to it better.
For liaisons for P and Z work?
Yeah, will you be attending those or no?
The planning commission meetings?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's the staff member for the planning commission.
Yeah, I was just making sure. So, I mean, if there was something that was, that we needed to know that was more in depth, maybe you could.
Correct. Like typically the planning and zoning staff, brings the recommendations to the board, whether there's like a plat for final approval or those type of things. Some of the housekeeping things are, more common, like the variance, conditional use permits. Perhaps city council isn't really interested in the day-to-day workings of those. Something contentious comes through, then perhaps that would be something to bring on board. Just in short, sometimes the liaison appointment to the P and Z is more of a punishment.
It is, yes, you're welcome.
So, and it's an opportunity at the same time too, if there's, I've seen in the past where perhaps maybe a council member might kind of struggle with some of the ins or outs of the P and Z, and it's an opportunity to say, go sit with them and walk in their shoes, but I think, you guys probably all have the gist of how it's functioning, and I don't think we'd be at a loss for something.
Well, I think it was a good learning experience, but last year there was one issue, and it was the rezoning of the disc golf course expansion parking lot. That was the only thing that was brought to the council. So, I mean, variances, this city is going to continue, well, until we get ordinances rewritten, but variances are, there's multiple every meeting.
And I think, I don't know if it's Councilmember Jensen, if you're the one that brought it up, we as staff are talking about communications, saying one of the things that we've already had some discussion of is, I think it was brought up before, of kind of doing the synopses of meetings. Again, they're not necessarily the minutes, but here's kind of general of what was discussed at a meeting. We can
Like an
work on that as well.
executive summary?
Yeah,
Yes.
pretty much executive summary. We can do that as well.
Perfect.
That would be helpful, yeah.
Okay, so who wants to volunteer for joint powers board? Quarterly. We'll talk after.
Powers Board currently meets, so it's quarterly, so January, April, July, and October. They meet currently on the second Monday at 6.
The chief's going to bring candy next time. So.
And they meet at,
Here to
in the conference room at the Pequot Fire Hall.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll talk to you guys all after about that.
Do you want to stay on it, or would you like,
I mean, there's only 2 spots, right? There's Heartland Cable and Joint Powers now. So, I mean, it doesn't bother me to stay on it. It's like a fun thing to be on. You get to
Hey,
see
it's
all of the
fun
fire
to
trucks.
see.
It's super cool. Learn about them.
Yeah.
I know a lot more than I used to, and I think it's nice. All the people are very friendly, so it's a fun one to be on, I think, if you want to pick one. But so I don't mind being on it, especially now it's only quarterly instead of
There you go.
monthly meetings. So
Well, I would nominate Councilmember Ball then to continue under
I'll second.
And we need an alternate for
We
that
do
as
need an
well.
alternate.
I'll be the alternate.
Perfect.
And then we just need Heartland Cable
Volunteer.
for that
fine.
one meeting a year.
One meeting a year.
Perfect, all right. So do we need any formal motions?
Yes, I did. So
Okay.
I would say I request a motion to approve Resolution 05-2024, let's say with the following amendments/insertions of continuing the city council meetings the first Monday at 6:30 PM, workshops to be scheduled as needed, the elimination of the Cemetery Commission, Parks and Recreation Committee, and Planning Commission liaisons, appointment of Councilwoman Ball as the primary on the Joint Powers Board, and Councilmember Jensen as the alternate on Joint Powers Board, and Councilmember Maroney on the Heartland Cable Commission.
So move.
I'll second.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, opposed? Motion carries. Should we take like 5-minute recess? And then we'll continue with the communications recommendation? 2 hours? All right, we'll do that.
Testing, 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 testing. Testing, testing, testing. Testing? Testing? Testing. Testing. Testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing. Sorry. Testing, testing. Oh. All right. Thanks, Deb. You can mute him again.
All right, we will go ahead and move on to the communications recommendation. Mr. Chansky?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm going to let Administrator Ike speak to the recommendations here in just a second. I'll just kind of give a background. So the last few months, obviously, communication has been something, I should say, in just the last year and a half, has been something that we've really been striving to improve. And in November, especially with the open house on the City Hall, again, always looking at what kind of things we can improve and looking at recommendations back in August. When did we do that, Daniel?
August.
Thank you. August, we presented you the initial recommendations along with the communications plan. And that time we did the Nextdoor. We expanded for our social media from Facebook to Nextdoor and Facebook. We started doing press releases using the city's website, expanding those areas as well. At the time, Daniel had presented, Assistant Minister Ike had presented a concept for a newsletter that was kind of a more in-depth newsletter. And at the time, the council said, well, let's table that. Maybe we'll discuss the later date. Recently, the idea of the newsletter came back up. So we kind of went to the drawing board, our thinking caps on, and figuring out, okay, what can we do, within our current capabilities and kind of for a minimal cost. Because when it does come to communications, you can start spending money very quickly, and trying to look at what is our budget, what do we have budgeted in our communications, and what we can fit in there. So with that, I'm going to let Assistant Administrator Ike kind of get into what we're actually recommending tonight.
Hi there. So we have 3 primary recommendations that we're bringing to you guys tonight. 2 of them are actually pretty easy. I think don't really cost anything or are not that complicated really. It's just going to be my staff time making sure they come to fruition, and it's going to take me a while to probably develop them to get them to a really comfortable point. And then one of them is a little more complicated, which is the newsletter. So the first one that we're recommending is, as you guys know, we do have a sort of bi-monthly activities report right now that's in the form of the Breezy Brief that you guys are getting twice a month. We're recommending at this point that we change that a little bit to be a more public-facing document and change it into an actual monthly e-newsletter that would be presented to the public. Obviously, you guys would receive it same as everybody else. It would be posted to the website. It would be probably a bit more, still an activities report, but maybe a bit more designed, a bit prettier looking, stuff like that. Kind of simple stuff that we can do to improve it, but also to make it a little more communicable to the public so that people can know more of kind of what we're doing on a regular basis and how we're doing things and why we're doing them and stuff like that. Example of that is attached below here. This is sort of just a quick draft of kind of what I futzed up here. I don't think there's any need to make it more complicated than this. Nice, simple stuff. I can throw pictures in that easily enough if I want to as well. So if there's something that we want to show people, we can do that. I think that's a really simple thing. Like I said, shouldn't cost anything but my staff time. And I'll design it so that other members of the staff and whatnot can poke at it and change it or insert or remove things if they want to and have that done. I don't think that one's particularly complicated. I would recommend at this point, our first one's probably February, because the goal would be that we do those out and then we report on what happened the last month. So we would put one out like February 1st essentially, and that would be the report for January, so that everybody would know back, this is what happened in January. Because we've already produced 2 of them for December, it's kind of like trying to go back now and make one at this point in the beginning of January is a little more difficult. So that would be my recommendation there. The second sort of easy recommendation is to just, I'm going to have to create someplace on the website to house all this information. And while I'm doing that, I think there are some things we can bulk up, especially in the city project sections of the website and in some of the communication stuff that's there. So I'm recommending we create some kind of a transparency web page information hub on the website. Like I said, primary purpose would probably be up front and center to host this information, but I would also like to kind of put helpful links there and various other information. Like I said, I'd probably integrate that into the sort of city projects page area right now. There's some details to work out there. Administrator Chansky and I will kind of work it to make it look good and make sure it works out properly. Again, doesn't really cost anything. I think that's just my staff time. That will be probably a bit more of a long-term project that's going to take me a while to roll out as I kind of build things and do stuff as we go. And then the final recommendation is for the creation of an actual mailed newsletter. At this point, we're recommending just calling it the Breezy Brief Bulletin. So we'll have a Breezy Brief e-newsletter that's once a month. It goes out every month at the beginning of the month. And then we'll have a quarterly bulletin that goes out every quarter of the year. Goal of that is to kind of get stuff in the mail, something a little more physical, kind of try to get it out there and do stuff. We received a lot of feedback recently about, there's a lot of people who call in and they already know stuff, but maybe they don't know where to call or who to call or how to call or things like that. But then we also got a lot of comments on people who are like, I never heard anything about it at all. So if we go back to the mailer idea a little bit, as we talked about previously, I think we can kind of try to drive that a little bit more. The last one you guys looked at, I heard you guys maybe thought it was a little too complicated, maybe overdid it a little bit. I tend to do that. That's okay. There's no offense there. You get excited into projects and whatnot. But so I took that out there based upon your guys' comments and I scaled it back. So what I'm recommending at this point that we might want to consider, I took that initial design and I simplified it. And essentially we've got a 2-page newsletter here. The purpose of the design is this would be the front page, this would be the back page, and then these are the articles and the 4 sort of things down here. I can comfortably fit probably 4 things in here, a couple paragraphs, maybe 1 or 2 paragraphs each. The purpose of this is really to kind of encourage people, inform them of a project that's going on, talk to them about what we're doing in the city, and try to encourage them, hey, if you have questions, please call the city. Or if you want more information, please go to the web page or, look at it on the Facebook, where we post updates, things like that, to kind of encourage people to tell them what's going on and give them further resources to go there. We're not trying to provide answers to big questions in here. This is more of kind of just an informative, simple document to get it going. The purpose of this would be, like I said, this is sort of the back page, because what we want to do is we take it and we fold it in half. So it ends up being, it'll be printed on 8.5 by 11, exactly like this, would be folded in half, tabbed so that it's closed, postage would be done, and it would be mailed for us. At this point, I would recommend, if we move forward with that project, we probably want to work with Lakes Printing in order to do that. They've done work with us in the past, they know what they're doing, they have all the equipment that would need to be utilized in order to do that. We don't have any of that equipment in-house, so it'd be kind of impossible for us to do it at the scale and the level with the production volume we'd need to do here. So I would recommend going with them. In the interest of that, I did reach out to Lakes Printing to talk to them about what they thought printing would be, and I got 2 options, essentially, from them. We have an EDDM and we have a direct mailer. Now, these are all costs at this point estimated, but these are roughly going to be the totals that we're going to be looking at for everything. Obviously, this would probably next year require us to look at the budget again a little bit, and we'll bring something back to you guys on that once we get further into the year, obviously. But we should be able to cover everything perfectly fine with the way the budget is set up right now. We don't foresee any problems unless Administrator Chansky disagrees with that, but we looked over it and I think it's okay. So essentially, the real question at this point, I guess, is if we do move forward with the physical mailer, an EDDM so an EDDM is going to be more targeted, essentially, to the geographic area. And what an EDDM does is essentially we tell the post office, hey, we want to send out all of these letters, all of these newsletters, whatever, to all of these mailboxes registered on this address. And they take them and they just kind of pop them in the mailboxes. The advantage of that is it tends to be a little bit cheaper because the postage tends to be a little bit cheaper and the actual printing costs for bulk can sometimes be cheaper, but in this situation, I didn't see any difference on the actual printing cost really. Where the cost differences that you're seeing here are coming in, I think, are more from the fact that we're hitting less mailboxes on the EDDM, and I think that's because we have so many seasonal residents. So what's happening is with the EDDM, we're hitting all active mailboxes. So we're getting everybody who lives here full-time, and we're getting all the renters, and we're getting all of the active people, you know, in the beds. But we're missing a lot of seasonal people, and we're missing a lot of empty lots as well. You know, people who are taxpayers and have the land, but they don't actually live on it or don't have a mailbox on it for some reason. We're missing all of them. The other downside to an EDDM is because of the way the routes are set up around here, there's a lot of bleed. So this route with these combined costs here, there's a whole, I'd say probably about 200 of those mailboxes are probably outside the city. So be aware of that as well because of the way the routes are set up, there's some bleed. The other option, I talked to Lakes Printing, and they were able to put together a direct mailer list for me based upon actual taxpayer addresses. So a direct mailer in this situation with what they have would go directly to actual taxpayer addresses. So we would hit those seasonal residents because it wouldn't go to their address here. It wouldn't register as going to their address here. It would actually go to their Crow Wing County registered taxpayer address. They worked whatever magic they did on their end to figure out, they must have a deal with Crow Wing County to let them run their thing. When I contacted Crow Wing County and asked them what it would cost for us to be able to do it, they told me it would be a $200 charge with every run. So they must have some sort of agreement with them. The upside to that, obviously, you're hitting all the taxpayer addresses, you're hitting everybody who's here right now, heads and beds, yada, yada, yada. But you're gonna miss probably some renters, I think, if you do taxpayer addresses, just if there's a rental property, because the actual mailer will go to the address listed as the taxpayer, not the actual address of the property. So you're gonna miss a lot of renters possibly. You could also have some confusion over where things are going. There could be kickbacks, things like that. We've experienced that before, but I don't perceive it being a huge problem one way or the other. I guess it was more a question of what were you guys comfortable with paying and how are you comfortable doing it and kind of what was your target audience for who you wanted it to go to. So that's what I'm recommending at this point. If you guys have any thoughts, feel free to let me know.
I think these are all great ideas, and I think we should personally implement them all. One of the things I would probably lean more towards the direct mailer. And one of the suggestions that I'd probably throw out there is that every piece of communication that goes out encourages the digital sign up. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that potentially, you know, maybe a year or 2 years of running the printed, you know, quarterly statements, if you would, is we could start to kind of phase it out and say, we're moving to pure digital to save costs, right? Everybody's about saving the money. But if you still want that physical copy, to then sign up for a physical mailer for the quarterly. That way we can kind of put a sunset within a year or 2 years, give people, you know, of course, some time to look at that, but to encourage the digital communications, but still allow them to take the printed.
I mean, I agree with the recommendations, Danielle. You did a good job. I mean, communications has been a high priority of this council. We need to continue to improve communications, as was apparent at the December open house. I am in favor of the direct mailer. We have to include all taxpayers of this community. And seasonal is what, David, 42%, 41% is a large percentage of our tax base. They have a voice as well. I agree with Michael's comment, try to move towards, maybe 2 years it's going to take. Hopefully, that's enough. But also, I would like to see monthly a report to the council for how many people are subscribing, what's the percentage increase or decrease month to month, and as well, that's a start. And how many hits are we getting on the project pages? Not everything, but our goal is, whether it's Bushman Road, City Hall, any project that comes up, we're not trying to hide anything. Transparency is a big buzzword. We want the information to be out there for the residents to view. And also, I think part of that on the projects page, like the document that David did for the City Hall open house, it has to be condensed, an executive summary. You have to do it on how are we financing it. I see all the many resident emails that we're growing at 1%. Well, I've seen the Sheldon Cohen's report. He says 9%. David says 3 to 4. We need to provide an executive summary on these big projects for all the high-level bullet points and questions that the residents have asked. And it doesn't have to be, 20 pages. Something that somebody can look at. If you have a question, contact a council member, contact staff. But I think we're on the right track. I think this is really good.
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate staff taking the time to look into this further. I think you all understand and recognize the importance of enhancing communications and our approaches to sharing information with people, because that's the reality. I mean, that's the world we live in. People don't get their information from a single source anymore. And as a city, we should be finding ways and pursuing opportunities to get information out to people. Yes, people have a responsibility to be informed and to seek information as well. But there's a lot of things we can do, and I believe this is the start to actually being more proactive and engaging the community and its members. Kind of on a side note, do we have information on how many people have subscribed to the email?
Yeah, I do. I have the subscriber list right now. It's about it's ebbed and flowed a little bit, admittedly. When I first did it, there was obviously a huge influx. We hit up about, I want to say, 43 people at that point. It was getting up towards 50. Then a bunch of people unsubscribed because I think they subscribed thinking it was something different, and then when I started sending stuff, they were like, "Oh, well, I don't really care about this," and then they unsubscribed. Right now, we've fallen back down closer to the 36, 37 range, I believe, is where we're at. That's the actual number of total subscribers. It's only been up for about, I think, 2 months at this point now. And I think we've been getting, we get a couple subscribers here or there. We do need to do more outreach on that. I do plan, when there's time available, to do another round of social media communication on that and kind of get some more stuff out. The nice thing about the direct mailer is I can actually provide, on there I have a QR code. I may very well rejigger that QR code so it goes directly to the subscription page, and that's what it's for. So they pick up your phone and scan it. And then when you get there, you can make an account. Just so that it saves your information. You do have to make an account. I can't get around that because I have to have information on where to send it. But then they can choose which one they want to sign up for. And after that point, it's as simple as me just going onto the website and clicking the right button. And anybody who wants it via text will get it via text. And anyone who wants it via email will get it via email, or both. I test them on a regular basis, so I know they work. It's just the issue of, I know there's sometimes there can be some confusion, I know, with trying to sign up for the email. I know there's been a couple people who have said there's maybe something wrong with the system spitting back verification emails and stuff. I'm trying to explore that right now. It's a work in progress. That's always going to happen to a certain degree. So I'll work with those people as we go along, but that's kind of where that sits right now.
Yeah, and I don't know, Mike, if that was getting at what you had meant by including information on electronic newsletter. Was it the electronic newsletter sign up?
Yeah, it's to entice people to sign up for that digital
Yeah.
sign and get more people to subscribe to that, so that way the quarterly mail newsletters could potentially be reduced or fall off completely.
But it also makes having that data of how many people are using the website all the more important to help the council base their decisions. Do we need to end the newsletters or do we need to keep continuing it?
Right.
Yeah,
And
I think, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to echo on what the request was, is to see how many impressions we're seeing on Nextdoor and Facebook. Almost a communications summary.
Yeah, no, I think the mailer has been talked about many times. And for cost reasons, I don't think we've moved forward with it, but I think knowing all the other communication methods we've explored now, and we're still getting comments about not hearing information or not getting information, I think the mailer is a really good idea, even seeing the cost. I think the direct mailer is the way to go, because I think what we've heard is that the taxpayers need to know about the information. They're the ones that are paying the taxes for this in the city. So I think that's the audience we need to go out to. As far as phasing out, I mean, I don't know that I want to plan for it right now. I think we should just see how things go as far as like, are people actually signing up? Do we get calls about like how good that bulletin is, that they appreciate getting, those heads ups on those projects that are going on? So I would like, I do think that feedback would be nice to kind of see how that's working, if it's working. Because if it's not working, then we probably shouldn't be spending money on it. But hopefully this has some good benefits, so.
And I like that you get excited about it. I mean, someone has to, so I feel like that's not a bad thing. I also think that I would also like to see how much time does it take staff to prepare this? Because I think that, people don't understand like how much time prep work takes to get ready for meetings and to send out communication. So I think that I would like to know, how much, people need to understand like this is not something you're just throwing together. Like you're spending time on this and you're collecting information. I think that it's important to be able to say, no, I mean, this is how much, it's a lot more time than people think it is. And so I think, to you guys' credit, I mean, I would like to know, what is your time that you're putting into it so we can tell people that it's being done.
Yeah, at this point, obviously I don't have a hard number, but if you want to know a rough thing like Administrator Chansky and I have talked about, at this point I would say about 25% of my total time is being spent on communications.
That's a lot.
Usually it's the first thing that I do when I come in during the day. If you were to look at my calendar or someone requested it, they would see it's pretty much like everything up until noon is communications with some other stuff mixed in there. With the newsletter, in the current form I have it set up here, I would expect it would only go up to about 30%. I can probably get the newsletter, the mailer that we're talking about, I figure done in an 8-hour day. In current form, worst case scenario, it would take me 2 days. So I would say, with all this other stuff added, I would say, yeah, probably about 30% of my time would be total. As far as like Facebook analytics and Nextdoor analytics and stuff, though, I actually do collect that right now. You haven't seen it because it just kind of sits in my files. But if you wanted communication roll up on that, I could start putting that stuff together and whatnot and presenting it and whatnot. That would be pretty easy to do. The website is a little more difficult just because I gotta, I think, turn on the actual analytic systems, and like I gotta push some buttons and stuff, which I haven't had a chance to do it yet. But it should not be a complex project by any means.
All right, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt the 3 recommendations that we have in front of us for the digital breezy brief, the mailed out newsletter, and then the information hub on the city's website.
Direct.
What?
Direct.
And that would be for direct mailer on the mailer piece.
Perfect.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
To further, just because we've discussed it, can I make a motion to potentially start seeing those statistics in March or February.
In February. I don't think you need the motion.
You don't need a motion?
No,
Okay.
we can,
You've got
we'll
direction.
get on it and
You
we'll.
understand
We'll
what
get
we're
it as soon
We
as.
can then promote it as well.
We'll get it
So,
as soon
like,
as we
if
can.
we're talking to residents or if we're on our, like, we can also say, hey, go sign up for this mailing list, or, you know, I mean, I think it would help with our communications as well. To know those. All right, well, we'll move on to the 2024 chip sealing.
Joe?
Any questions?
That's the way to do it, Joe. Yeah, that was good. I like that.
The memo explained it perfectly.
Essentially, we don't have a chip sealing program per se, but I'm trying to maintain getting roads chip sealed early in their life, first 3 to 4 years. That's kind of like painting your wood house right after, instead of waiting for the weather to take effect, is kind of the approach we've taken. Ultimate costs are going to be determined by quantities of material used, but I'm pretty comfortable with that, so.
So the contractors have been on site and have done their sort of tabulation on estimated costs, close enough to where you're comfortable it's not going to come in 10 grand over?
No, I mean, all like, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, I did all the estimation for over $1 million of chip sealing in the city, and we were within 5% most years based off, you know, the actual, which is acceptable. And this is would be a good thing, because by working with Ideal Township, they're doing close to 200,000 next year. We could avoid, you know, the Crow Wing County's 10% fee that at one time was 5%, and previously they didn't charge a fee, but it's grown in popularity, so I'm sure they had to recoup costs. So I think it's a good, you know, neighboring communities partnership to help us both get lower costs ultimately. So
Perfect.
I'll make a motion to approve the chip sealing.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Right, moving on to the Red Oak Lane Sewer Extension.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'll kick this off, and if any technical stuff, I'll hand it over to Joe or Joe. Joe and Joe. Mr. Mike Wiebolt with Breezy Land Holdings LLC, they're the owners of Pelican Square as well as Ace Hardware, they're working right now in building a new building that actually I think would move the Ace Hardware over to between Terminal Road and Red Oak Lane. They're in that process right now. Their goal is to hope to start construction in the spring. So we've been working with them, and during that process, Public Works Supervisor Zierden identified an opportunity that we could potentially extend sewer along Chickasaw 11. Right now, it's in the county's right away in the ditch up to airport, because we have sewer in airport. So we'd pretty much shoot it up County Road 11 to then be kind of a terminus, a manhole at the beginning of Terminal Road and then the beginning of Red Oak Lane. Pretty much a pretty straight, roughly 750 square foot shot. Extension, it's got a lot of the grade is there, so it'd be an easy grade. This would be a trunk line. With the intention of, by putting it in these spots, you could then run sewer down both Terminal and Red Oak Lane in the future when they get reconstructed. Both of those roads are getting close to probably being reconstructed in the future years. When we do the streets plan this summer, we anticipate they'll probably be near the top of that. And both of those roads, when Joe and I discussed it, we think would be great benefit from a sewer expansion down those roads, because when you look at the plat map, they are smaller lots. They aren't big enough individually to support a septic, so if someone wants to build on them, they have to buy multiple lots, where if you have city sewer, as long as the proposed development can meet setbacks, there can be one on every single lot. I say in theory, there's topography, all that other kind of stuff. But in theory, each lot could have a development on it. You don't have to buy 2 or 3 lots to do something. When we look at the minimum maintenance areas, just to the northwest of these areas, I think expanding to Terminal Road and Red Oak Lane in the near future would be a great case study, because those, again, are smaller lots, areas, those minimum maintenance roads of, okay, we're going to expand it, the road's going to need to get done in the next few years anyway, and do we see development? Does it spur development or not? Maybe that helps the council be informed of, okay, when it comes time to start looking at the minimum maintenance areas and how we should have them developed or improved, do we want to look at including sewer in those areas or not, based off of what happens here on Red Oak Lane and Terminal Road? There is a benefit to Mr. Wiebolt. We sat down with him 2 weeks ago. Myself and Joe sat down with him, and the benefit to him in his development, the one it would allow him by doing this expansion, it would allow his new building to connect to the sewer, which would essentially allow him to go from 25% impervious to 50% impervious. City municipal sewer is much more, it's a more beneficial, more, it doesn't fail as often as a septic does. So long-term generally has more benefit long-term than a septic does. He identified that as well. That would be a good benefit. Obviously, it always comes down to the cost thing. So what we're kind of here today to ask for really is attached. Woodseth put together, and the city engineer put together a proposal to kind of do a feasibility report of what it would take to actually do the extension, how much it would cost, where it should go. And that cost of his proposal is $6,500. We pay that out of the sewer fund. So we are requesting, and we recommend that the council would approve that proposal and direct the city engineer to get us that feasibility so we can keep moving forward and ensure that we're not holding up Mr. Wiebolt in his development either. So if you have any technical questions, Joe and Joe, I point to them.
Anybody have?
No, I think it's a good idea myself.
No questions from me.
Me either.
All right. Motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the feasibility study up to $6,500 for the sewer extension to be paid out of the sewer fund.
Second.
All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to old business. Chickasaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we discussed this in December. At that time, the council was looking for kind of what would a breakdown look like if we, as part of White Birch's proposed development of townhomes in Chickasaw Circle, brought sewer into the cul-de-sac. City engineer did that breakdown. That is included in there. The breakdown cost, and he can explain it more, is kind of based off of the fact that this would be an 8-inch trunk line. So when you look at what are the benefits to each party, you're looking at, the city's benefit is the 24 units, parcels that could eventually be connected to that sewer. So that's a good chunk of what Joe based it off of. I don't know, Joe, if you want to speak to that any further. Okay.
I can surely speak to that. Any questions? I'm Joe, sitting here. What I do with a trunk line situation is the units, you take all the units total, and then this particular one you have in front of you, but it was 2575. The units that White Birch wants is the 8 units. There's 24 up Chickasaw. And so the first thing I did was take and see how far we can get up there and if we can get it all. And we can get to the whole stretch of Chickasaw. So, and then the second thing I do is now I'm going to break down those costs, because up to the cul-de-sac with actually to the back of the development that they want to do is where I would need to start the line that would go up into the cul-de-sac. And since there's no construction there now, to bring the line through an easement up into the cul-de-sac is
gonna be the most inexpensive way to do it and do it now. It's not to say you wanna do the rest of the road, but if you do decide to do the rest of the road at a later date, you would need to have that or find it somewhere else. And what I was looking at, you'd have to go underneath the County Road 11, so you're gonna have another jacking underneath to do that. At a later date, if you did that, you wouldn't have this access to that manhole. So it's just a matter of projecting to the future and trying to set yourself up for less costs later.
I did, oh, go ahead.
Well, and then I break it up.
Go ahead, finish, sorry. No, you finish.
Okay, and then that's a start off at 28, excuse me, that's a start out at 75 and 25%. And then after you get done separating the true costs all the way, at the bottom two numbers there is 63.8 and 36.2%, and that's the cost. The city would be 158,104, and the developer would be 89,674.15. So, and that's the idea of the shared trunk cost. Because we are gonna use the line from that point to the lift station as a trunk line, because it's gonna feed more than just that development.
And that's Joe, to clarify, that's an 8-inch trunk line?
Yeah, it's an 8-inch. I just refer to it as a trunk line. Doesn't matter what size it is, it matters what it's doing. There's not enough volume there, housing, to support anything besides an 8. There won't be any other development going into it. That's a minimum line you need anyhow for municipal.
Councilmember Jensen did ask me a question about kind of what's there, looking to the future. So right now, about half of those 24 are currently developed. The other half are undeveloped. These lots on Chickasaw, they are big enough that they can support septics without a problem. So it's not kind of one of those, well, without sewer, this area is going to go undeveloped. When you look at, okay, if the sewer goes in, when can we look at recouping costs? Because the idea here is that 158, 104 and change, the city could then, when the future is expanded through Chickasaw, ideally probably when next time Chickasaw gets redone, you could then assess that cost in addition to the extension cost to all the lots. So we essentially would be eating the cost immediately until the sewer is expanded and then connected to. So, you know, when will Chickasaw need to be done? You know, we'll know that for sure once we do the streets plan, but Joe and I looking at it, it's kind of, we're probably at least 10 years, Joe.
None of you will be on council anymore.
Yeah. It's probably at least.
You are right.
2006 or 7, so 30 years is a very acceptable basic lifespan for a paved road, especially low density residential traffic. I mean, it should. But,
it's a dead end.
Yeah.
I have a question. Was there any other residential area that the city chose not to do something like this, and then it cost us more after the fact?
Well, they all do, because all the prices go up, so.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll, you know, if we don't.
It's a matter of how much.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you expect to get out of it later?
Right.
You know?
This is kind of a combination of, this is, I think, the easiest route to get sewer in this area. It's not the only route. If you don't do it now, we will have opportunity to do it later. Obviously, this might be more expensive. The defect now is you do it now, and then it's 12 years before the road gets built, and then generally you give people time to connect. So it could be 20 to 30 years before we get paid back for this money.
That was my next question. So I know that like we get interest when we make money on the interest
once you assess it,
Right,
but we wouldn't
right.
assess it until the extension goes in.
right. So down the line though, we will get paid back essentially and more for doing it now when they connect.
Not more.
If someone pays the assessment up front, which sometimes people do, then the only time we make money is if someone chooses to pay an assessment over
Right,
time, but
right.
a lot of times
The resort has done that though, where they have chosen to do that over
but
that.
sometimes a lot of people I know will pay it up front and just call it a day. So that's where it's kind of one of those things that based on each property owner, again, we wouldn't even be talking about assessing that cost until it's actually extended, which again is potentially, you know, over a decade away. And then you got to get that, there's generally a time period you give people to connect. So that's where we're going. You're probably talking north of 20 years before the city would see a dollar.
To me, it seems like a lot of money to spend right now for
Right.
something that's unlikely to happen
I would
anytime soon.
agree. In December, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, you said this Chickasaw Circle was not on the future sewer expansion. So, I mean, we don't want to hold up White Birch, but I think the funds that we know within 5 years we have to expand the current sewer system. In my way of thinking, the money could be better spent on what's identified for the expansion.
Airport and terminal, like we just talked about, those would probably those are ones we identify like absolutely
Much sooner.
would be great opportunities here. Again, the reason we're discussing this came as a recommendation from the planning commission to at least look at it.
Sure.
You know, if the council chooses not to do this, then kind of, I would, you know, essentially gives White Birch the go ahead to do whatever they need to do to just serve their 8 units. And then we can work with them if they want to talk about that being a private line, or it's something the city puts in on their behalf and then assesses it to them. That's a conversation we can have with them. But at this point, we're just kind of looking at, you know, if you don't want to move it this way, then you can pretty much give White Birch the blessing to just do whatever they need to serve their eight units.
That's right.
Was there any looking at the average life of septics on Chickasaw?
I'm not a septic guy, but most septics, I think, is
30
it
years,
20 to 30 years,
yeah.
you're generally going to have to redo it. I do know that properties have to have room for 2 when you do it. Those lots that we're talking about right now, they're pretty big and do have room. Now, the ones up on Red and Terminal, there's no room to put septics on those. That's why I think they just sit there too.
Yeah, I was just curious as to, you know, what's the age of the average septic?
20 to
I'm
30
guessing
years.
most are on their first site yet.
Oh, are you talking about the septics
yeah.
that are currently on there?
Currently
Oh, yeah,
there.
Chickasaw's a newer development, so they're still within probably their first 20 years.
I will say some of the standards and stuff for keeping septics are getting more stringent, but I don't think on this case that it's a real.
Correct. But another, by putting the sewer line in now, that 50, changing from 25 to 50% pervious coverage, I mean, that's a bigger cell usually around, like the places we identified, sewer makes sense, is like smaller lots, lake lots, but even larger lots, you know, that pervious coverage could be a benefit, but I don't know the value. I don't know if you can just make a decision in this situation by it.
The two things I see on this situation, one is, well, the time is gonna pretty much ace them all, but if you do put it in now, obviously you're set up better. And what happens later if one person wants a sewer system because their septic does go out, then they have to just follow with septics. But, and they wanted sewer, then there comes the idea of where's the cost gonna be now? Because that's gonna be a real large cost then. And so who's gonna start that egg rolling down the hill? I'm not gonna pay, I don't wanna pay for all that to come in just for mine, you know, where's the sharing going on? Well, there will be nobody to share it at that point, so.
And some cities like Baxter have required, as soon as a septic, you know, failed, or that they
you have
required
sewer,
their city
that's-
residents to hook up to
That's
cities.
most cities, and it's if you
Right.
have sewer within a certain distance.
So I think the most recent agreement, Joe, we did, which was the White Birch Villas, that was, I think they had, was it 15 years, Joe, I think, to connect, or when their sewer failed, or when the property changed hands, whichever comes first.
Or the system reached 20 years of age.
Yeah.
That was the, and
Yeah.
it has changed in the city. We've had multiple different ways of doing it, so.
Do you want to come up quick? Yes, please.
Go right ahead. Well, I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I think we just want to do whatever you guys
No,
want.
well, I just want you to be aware of when you're making your decisions, because I think the city engineers pointed out some good things. And first of all, if White Birch goes in and does it alone, which we're comfortable in doing, we were before and we are now. If we go in and do it alone, it will not meet city standards from the standpoint of hooking up to it in the future. We're gonna go to a 6-inch line, a grinder station, and pump it to the lift station, probably.
Yeah, you don't need to.
But whatever, I mean, we're gonna do something that'll be a lot less costly than it will at this point. So we can do that, we understand what those costs are to us. What it doesn't allow you then, in the future, is any ability to hook up to that. And that's been explained by your engineers, that, you know, if you need the easement and if you need an 8-inch line, it won't come from there, it's gotta come from someplace else. So I just wanna make sure you're clear on that. As far as how they've worked out the percentages, and I understand them, and they're really favorable for us, and I appreciate that. And again, this is kind of one of those workshop things, where do we head down the road? Just without having the owner sitting present with me, I mean, my anticipated expense for just serving our property probably would have been in the range of about $120,000. Where I see now it's at potentially 90. I mean, I wouldn't mind shifting the burden onto the developer to an extent to reduce the city's burden to get the manhole up there so that it could be a city project and assessed. So that would be one thought to think about. Otherwise, again, I think the solution for us is just gonna go private, and more than likely we'll have the discussion about whether it's private or city.
Well, that was the other.
Yeah, I mean.
I wanted to ask Joe, are we gonna allow the, private or septic, only because he said one thing there, he put a 6-inch line and we want to do that. Sewer, you need that.
Right, but I mean, it's gonna be a development that crosses our property essentially into the lift station, it'll all be on our land.
Yeah, I know, I just.
Yeah, but no, I agree, if it's not private and it's a municipal system, it's gonna jump up to 8 and.
Which isn't the end of the world, but.
No, but it's
some of those things they can't touch.
Yeah, so, anyways, I just wanted to kind of make sure you were aware of those conditions, and again, appreciate the opportunity. You know, it's been a couple months, so we could have, again, had one of those in-between workshops and probably tackled this thing instead of, dragging it out for 2 months and now leave with some uncertainty possibly yet today. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that.
If you have any questions, I mean, go ahead and shoot for me too. I'll just kind of park here for a minute. Can I speak?
Yeah. Oh, yes, I was actually gonna, how old your septic was, because I know there's some brand-new houses that were built last year.
That's what I wanted
Yeah.
to speak to. I can't speak for everyone on Chickasaw Circle. I've lived there 7 years, my wife and I.
Sir, sir.
Oh, name and address.
Just give us your name and your address.
Michael Buckner,
Thank you.
Chickasaw Circle. I have spoken with 5 of our neighbors. None of them are even remotely interested in a sewer. None. I'm not interested in one. 10 years from now, who knows? For me. I understand the financial end of it from the city standpoint in terms of putting it in now. I wonder, has the city done any surveying of the existing residents to see what their interest in sewer would be now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? I don't think they have, because no one has asked us. I think that's important, but, because I think that's a lot of money to spend now for who knows what down the line. Now, one other thing that I think you should be aware of, there are 24 lots. There are a number of us that own the lot that our home is situated on and an adjoining lot. So there would not be the need for sewer extension hookup, at least, to a number of those lots. And again, whether the next generation would peel them off, I don't know. But it seems like a lot of money to spend now, in my mind, a lot of money to spend now with an awful lot of unknowns down the line. And the only other thing I'd like to say is, or ask is, we moved here 7 years ago to a nice, quiet little area. Things have changed dramatically in that 7 years. One thing that I wonder if anyone is considering, I know the rezoning is going to happen. I'm pretty sure of that. Has anyone done a study of the traffic on Ouray and at the intersection with County Road 11? Because if there are 8 townhomes, double garages, if they're like the ones on the golf course, double garages, single garage, potentially 3 times 8 is 24 cars, trucks, four-wheelers, golf carts. That's an enormous amount of traffic on one short, narrow street connecting with Interstate 11, which is just, it's a nightmare now to pull out. Either way, I don't know what that's going to do to it, or what that development is going to do to that, but I don't think it's going to be anything very positive.
And I will speak to that. I think that you're not alone in the concern about the speed too. One of the things is from state statute, we actually cannot change any speed limits unless we do a citywide speed study. So since we are working on starting the streets plan, which is going to be the long term, maybe we can even look at a citywide speed study, which would then allow us to lower speed limits. Let's just say on Dove or Ranchette or these other areas. So it's definitely in the works, so I do appreciate you coming up and speaking to us, because I agree too. I think, I don't know if I've ever talked to any resident, especially in Baxter, who was excited about hooking up to city sewer. I think most people wanted to keep their own, so I do appreciate the input though, and the questions.
Well, and selfishly, we've been there 7 years. 30-year septic system is going to work for us.
Right.
I have neighbors who are, their homes are newer than ours. There's 1, 2, 3 of them, and there's 2 other homes that were built the same year ours was.
Yep.
So there's an awful lot of new systems on that street, and I don't know, it just seems to me like an awful lot of money to put there, and it's going to be dead money for a long, long time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree. Yeah.
The point of what he raised as far as traffic goes, is that something I'm gathering that planning and zoning spent some level of time and conversation around, or?
Back to that, I think there was some discussion during that meeting about traffic and, but they didn't have any recommendations coming out of that regarding that. Yeah, one of the things that I think Mr. Landecker even spoke about is these properties would be included in is it the villas, David?
Yeah, village.
The village, White Birch Village HOA. So it means that one of their covenants is they cannot be rented. So there won't be any short-term rentals or anything with that. And right now, I think a lot of them are essentially seasonal properties right now. So it doesn't mean they can't be year-round, but currently in the current village, a lot of them, I think you said majority of them,
I think it's like 70%.
70 are seasonal. So, I think that also, the planning commission heard that, and I think that's also kind of played with their, of no recommendation regarding the traffic, was that, well, they can't be short-term rentals, and most of them aren't year-round properties anyway.
Well, and I think, like, we've heard from the county too, that they're looking at some of the intersections on 11 too. So
Correct.
hopefully, like, even, dare I say, a roundabout, another, like, around Ranchette or some of that area potentially. So that may slow down traffic too. I can see that curve probably gets bad there, so.
I think I would be more inclined to just allow you guys to do what you need to do to go forward with the development. And then again, I think going back to the workshops, this could have been a perfect chance for the workshop to learn, ask questions, instead of it being at a council meeting, so that, you know, we can cut down time, because we are definitely not sewer experts by any means. So I know you are, but I'm not. So that would be I think my position on it, if somebody wants to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the planning and zoning's recommendation to rezone without pursuing any further into the sewer.
I'll second.
Right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Just for clarification, not pursuing sewer.
Hold on, can you come up to the mic so we can?
Oh, sure. Just for clarification, the proposed not to go to city sewer, just to the Chickasaw Circle? Because I was just hearing kind of two discussions that it could be city sewer to the front of the development.
So this is just pretty much,
Yeah.
we're giving White Birch the ability just to do what you need to do.
You do what you gotta do.
Yep. Sorry to make you wait. Thank you, Joe. All right. All right.
Nice evening, everyone.
Thank you. We'll move on to the ladder truck.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So as we talked about, I think back in November, for the city has agreed to be the financing entity for the purchase of the fire district's ladder truck. And part of that recommendation that came from Baker Tilly, our municipal advisors, was that a joint powers agreement should be drafted that kind of binds all three entities together, so no entity can leave and leave the other entities kind of holding a bag on this. So the city attorney did draft one, which was attached. In your discussion in November, there was a request that there be an element, a cash purchase element to that agreement, so we could do bond, a debt issue, or a cash purchase. That is included. In that, we included if the council went that option, a amortization schedule for 10 years, which is the average bond, would be the average same kind of length of bond for a vehicle, at a 3% interest rate. We felt like that was a conservative number. Probably wouldn't get that low on a bond. One of the things I do want to point out, we got kind of a question got asked after the packet went out, in that amortization schedule. So Daniel, if you want to go down to, it's like page 72. It lists at the end of it a total interest payments of $242,858.82. And in my packet, I said that's how much the city would make in my memo. I would want to clarify, I think the better phrasing would have been the fire district would pay $242,858.82 in interest over 10 years. The reason being I did some number crunching, and currently the budget, the capital budget annually for the fire district is $262,468.98, annualized over 25 years, okay? So that's what, to fund the capital plan over 25 years is $267,468.98 a year. In 2024, the city of Breezy Point is paying 66% of that. Chief Schwankel's here. I know Councilmember Jensen had some questions about how that's broken down. He can speak to that shortly. So if you project that stays roughly in the future, that split stays roughly the same, you apply that to the interest, about 66% of that $242,000 in interest is actually the city's own money. So when we start paying ourselves back, that's more of kind of a reimbursement than anything else. It's actually not new money coming to the city. So new money coming to the city would actually be Pequot's percentage, which would be about 82,500-ish over the course of 10 years. And if you break it down, the cost of the truck being $1,409,470. If you divided that by the projected annual payment of $165,232.88, it would take 8.53 years for the city to break even. So you could say we technically wouldn't make money. We get all our money back, our $1.4 million back in 8.53 years, and then the remaining year and a half would be actual revenue. So that 82,000 roughly of new money we'd get back, that's going to be in 2032 and $2033, not in 2023 dollars. So that's where, going back to my memo, I still stand with my statement that I think bonding is still the better way to go, is my professional opinion, because by doing the cash, we essentially use 1.4 million of our reserves now, that's gone, that we then don't have for upcoming projects, be it City Hall or Bushman or implementing the streets plan, implementing a CIP, or any other future project the city might have to forego. It's take our reserves minus 1.4 million. Bonding, would we potentially pay more interest? Yes, but the city still has its capital to the projects that we need to do. Either way, our payment to the fire district doesn't actually change. So unless the cut changes, our payment to the fire district doesn't change. So the only entity that ends up, quote, suffering from the difference in interest is the fire district. So was the fire district paying 3%, or is the fire district paying some other percent that would be determined at the time the bond is issued? So our payment is essentially fixed. So with that, Chief Schwankel, before they discuss, I don't know, do you want to kind of give a little education on how you came up with the breakdown that you presented to the... What?
The percentage of who's paying what on the capital?
Yep, who pays what in the capital, how that was decided before the board approved it.
Do you want?
Short one.
So I am Mike Schwankel, and I haven't met a couple of you yet. So basically, this is how it went. And in January, I was tasked with coming up with a capital plan for the department. We've never had one before, which is part of how we wound up where we're at. And so what we looked at was two different things. Number one, what does the department, now that the two cities are together with the joint powers, what does the department look like with just the two cities? And then what does the department look like with the contracts that we have with the other communities? Because there's always the risk that they may pick up and run, go somewhere else, contract with somebody else. And it's not super frequent that townships or cities will do that, but it's not infrequent at the same time. And it actually was a significant discussion with several of them, as we did lose one more township in the last year, between a few of them, that there's a possibility that they might go somewhere else. And so we looked at kind of those just the two cities, and then with the contracted areas. And we evaluated what do we need personnel, equipment, and then what are the costs, and how can we kind of moderate the contract costs, because it benefits the district to have them. It's extra money that we don't have to raise between the taxpayers here. And so we kind of came up with, as far as the fleet of equipment goes, one truck we maintain because of the contracts. And so if we lost our contracted areas, we'd cut one particular truck out of the fleet, but to protect the two cities, we'd have to maintain the rest of the staff and the rest of the equipment. And so we kind of looked at a 10-year average of where were the calls happening at between all of the areas that were covered by the fire district. And the Pequot and Breezy hub, Pequot being the highest, had the largest call volume, and then kind of in comparison to what would it cost to maintain the equipment that we would still need if people left. And basically we came up with, between Pequot and Breezy, we put the capital or the operating costs at 75%, and then 25% was generated with the contracts with the other entities. And so with the capital plan, we looked at what we have to maintain and then what we have because of them. And that's where the capital side of things came from. The two cities are paying for the capital that we have to keep no matter what. That way, if somebody does drop out, we're not having to suddenly, we can just reevaluate the equipment that we have and moderate that cost. And so they're actively paying for one apparatus over the 25-year capital plan, and the two cities are paying for the rest of the fleet that we have to maintain. Now, as far as the cost goes, we just simply looked at, and as we did look at with all of the contracts when it comes to the operating budget, we just looked at taxable building market value as a way to, between the two cities, Pequot and Breezy, how do we distribute the cost of this evenly to the taxpayers? And so that's how Breezy ended up at 66%, 66, right?
66.
And Pequot at 34%. So as a taxpayer in Breezy, if you can find a way to get more people to build in Pequot, we can shift that just a little bit.
And I think, Chief, one of your arguments with that as well was kind of, even though the percentages are split, when you look at the percent of their tax bill, I think you told me.
Yeah.
It's essentially the
dollar
same.
for dollar, one resident here is paying the same thing based on what their building is worth as they are there. Instead of just splitting it 50-50, the taxpayer there is going to pay significantly more per dollar of value than we are here. And I looked at it kind of when we were discussing this is we owe it, since we are a joint powers. I mean, Breezy owes it to the taxpayer, which I am one, to protect my interest and to make sure that what I'm paying in taxes is being used appropriately. But now, since we're joint powers, we really have to take Pequot into consideration as well. And all of the people that are part of the district are paying an equal share of that cost. And so I know I've furnished you with I've given you the kind of the projected 25-year plan as far as operating costs goes and capital costs goes that show kind of the increments, best guess. And so that's what we're trying to create, is some kind of consistency where you can look and project in 5 years it might cost us this, in 10 years it might cost us that. The one huge variable is cost of trucks. Our 2014 was our last engine purchase. We spent just over about $420,000, $430,000 on an engine. It had a few bells, not too many whistles, but it was pretty much a straightforward, what we need truck without all the extras. And that same truck today, well, now 10 years later, is right around $1 million.
It's double.
And most of that's happened in the last 3 to 4 years. That's where most of the increases have gone up. And so that's just kind of a forewarning. That's kind of the one thing that we're going to have to look closely at in the future is this is the capital plan, the cost of it. Every 5 years, I don't know what the number is, but we're going to have to take a serious evaluation of what the actual cost of trucks are, just because of how fast they're changing.
And you tried to do that in we try to guess what that truck would be
in my cap. I built
5
in,
to 10.
I put bigger numbers in bigger, but
I was just letting them know that.
yeah, it's one of those things that you guess as best you can based on history, but sometimes it plays tricks on you.
Mm-hmm. So ultimately tonight, whether you choose to bond or pay cash doesn't have to be decided tonight. I think the biggest thing would be to approve the joint powers agreement. Pequot did approve it.
Yes, they did.
Just earlier this evening. It'll go before also the joint powers board next Monday to approve. So then we can then cut that check and it'll be, so it can be delivered on the 17th.
17th.
And then also, there's also a resolution attached. We call it a reimbursement resolution. Pretty much it says per the IRS and the Treasury regulations, approve it. If you approve this resolution essentially before you incur the cost, it gives you, I think this one says 18 months to then choose to bond. So it gives you the ability to bond down the road. The intention of that is, again, when we're looking at potentially City Hall or Bushman, you can then package that with another debt issuance and look at getting a better rate. Because the bigger generally a debt issuance is, the more attractive it is to a buyer, and then you get better rates. So That's where we don't have to necessarily decide today. Obviously, decisions going to be made on Bushman, decisions needs to be made on City Hall. Based on those decisions, we could then look at bonding later this year. I would say later this year on the truck, or paying, just calling it a cash. So this JPA gives this body the ability to decide which route you want to go.
Do anybody have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 062024.
Second?
I'll second that.
Does that include the joint powers agreement as well? So it's either two separate things. It can be one motion, but.
Yes, it would include also the approval of the joint powers agreement.
Thank you. So
I'll second the motion for approving both.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Chief.
Thanks.
All right, we'll move on to the rules of conduct and procedure.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So that was brought up at the December 5 meeting. Council had discussion on the rules of conduct and procedure, and specifically how do you handle allegations of misconduct against council members. You asked me to engage the city attorney on an opinion. So I did ask him, based off of the discussion you had, I kind of came up with 5 questions to really try to draw out from him. They would be, who should make them public? I think that was one of the specific questions that was raised. Is it a council member? Is it a member of the public? How should they be investigated? What are grounds for investigation? What obligations does the council have to address the misconduct? And then what action can occur if there is misconduct? So the rest of it is essentially from the attorney. He reviewed this and said, this is, yep, present this to the council. And so to the first question, he says there's no requirement that misconduct allegations be made, absent a request for the data. So you don't have to make it public if you don't want to. He said, additionally, if this misconduct is asserted in a communication between an individual and elected official, that is private data unless one of those two individuals makes it public. To the second question regarding how should they be investigated, pretty much it comes down to, depends on the nature of the allegation. Are we talking just a violation of a city policy, or is it a violation of law? Cities operated differently. It could be having an administrator or human resources person on staff do it, if there is one, or having a city attorney or the city attorney or a third party attorney do that. To the third question of what obligations do they have, he said, city attorney stated the trigger for an investigation depends on the desires of the council. You know, what is kind of your threshold? You could take up each allegation individually to determine if there's investigation, or you could set a formal policy that dictates what type of allegations will be investigated and by whom. To the fourth of the obligation of the council, he said that you have no obligation to investigate allegations of misconduct. However, obviously, if misconduct goes unchecked or ignored, essentially negates the rules of conduct. It kind of makes it pointless, as we discussed when we adopted them. This is kind of a self-policing thing. There could be liability to the city depending on, again, are we talking just a misconduct, a violation of the city's own policy, or are we talking about a violation of law? And then just could it end up in organizational dysfunction? And then to the last question, what action can be taken if there is misconduct? Ultimately, it comes down to a little bit what I discussed in December as well. As elected officials, there's very little anyone can do to you or you can do to each other regarding discipline. It really comes down to, for most cities, if there's an issue, it comes down to censure, which is essentially a public rebuke to that member. Again, and it all depends on whether that person is bothered by it. Some council members are bothered by it, some don't care. Kind of depends on that. He said there's really only in the division and I did link the statutes anytime he mentioned them. There's a very narrow situation where a council member can be removed from their post. And generally they've been convicted of a felony or a crime by a court of law, or they've just refused to stop attending meetings over a period of time. It's not just one meeting here, it's like they haven't shown up for 6 months or something like that. So the city council, however, you can do is what some cities do. I think a city of Brooklyn Park did this. a couple of years ago. They censured a member and then said, like, you're removed from all the committee assignments, you're limiting interaction with staff. Pretty much you can come to council meetings and that's it. So beyond those things, that's pretty much what you can do. Ultimately, he said, whatever direction you choose to go, he said the development of a policy addressing the procedure by which allegations of misconduct are handled would be wise. So with that, I was kind of handed over to you. That's all of this is coming directly from the attorney. And we'll look for you of however potentially you want to proceed. If it's amending your code of conduct to include something regarding this, further information, whatever it is, you just let us know.
Thank you. Does anybody have any?
Well, I don't think it's something that's going to be decided tonight. The request was made. I guess I'm not sure how to proceed on this personally. I mean, we don't have HR. I would like to see examples of how other cities handle this. This is a fairly lengthy discussion at which I don't have any expertise, to be quite honest.
And what's the allegation? I mean, I think it's very civil, seems very civil, and I really don't know if we have the ability to outline all of these things ourselves.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think everyone just take responsibility for their actions and.
I'll maybe speak a little bit to being the council member that brought this up last month. Obviously, as people probably know, there was a reason behind why I was seeking clarification, and still would appreciate whatever the council's thoughts are on how we want to proceed procedurally. I've been approached by numerous residents in this community and taxpayers, numerous. I've been provided information on a number of interactions among certain community members and the mayor. It's frustrating that I'm even in a position, frankly, to have to be the one to be addressing this and bringing it up. But I don't feel that I'm doing my responsibility and upholding my obligations as an elected official if it's not brought up. And if there isn't an opportunity for the entire council to understand exactly what's taking place, and is it a situation that requires further investigation or not? I'm certainly not the person to make that determination. Clearly why I wanted to bring it in front of the whole council. I'm prepared tonight with the information that I've been provided to share it with the council. It kind of seems to me like it's appropriate for the council to review the information and to revisit it at the February meeting. This is information that goes back several months now, so part of my concern is that if we don't acknowledge it, if we don't at least consider it, how does that play into a further erosion of trust that the public needs to have in us as elected officials? So just wanted to put that out there, wanted to speak directly to why I was looking for clarification, wanting to get council's thoughts on, in a case where we do have allegations, what do we do?
I'm kind of confused, like what allegations? I mean, we're still protected under our freedom of speech, right? And I'm not understanding what it is that you're trying to do here. I don't understand, because...
See, that is, Angel, excuse me.
Madam Mayor, thank you.
So much your take and reaction and approach to things is it's less about accepting responsibility and more about deflecting blame onto other people where it does not
Blame for what? I
belong.
don't understand.
When I'm hearing from public that they feel your conduct is retaliatory, is harassing, is disrespectful, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to do anything. I'm trying to simply bring information forward that is being provided to me by the community as an obligation I feel I have. And I think the League of Minnesota Cities would agree that if there are potentially situations going on that could inflict liability on the city, and I, as an elected official, have information, and I do nothing with it? That doesn't speak too well for myself.
I haven't done anything wrong, so at this point, I really don't
There
want to
should be nothing to be
entertain-
concerned about,
I'm
apparently.
not.
I don't know.
I'm not. I just think that it's very petty, and I think that there are so many other things that I could point out, including things that you've said or they've said, very hurtful, untrue, harassing things that have been said about me, names that have been called, very bad names, other things that have been said about my children, other things that have been said about my husband. So at this point, I don't feel like this is something that we need to discuss further. I think at this point, I would like to move on because I don't know how, there's no way that we're going to be able to go through here and say, you can't say this, you can't say this. Like, no, I'm going to defend myself because I deserve to defend my family and my children and my integrity. So at this point, I really don't think that there's anything else that really needs to be talked about because, again.
Well, and I'm sorry, but you're one member of this council. There are 4 others that might have something different to think about things.
I'm happy to listen to what other members of council say, but at this point.
You are not in charge of this council. We are equal peer elected officials.
I realize that.
Okay?
I know that.
Well, sometimes your conduct doesn't display that.
I still run the meeting, and I don't think you
I'm
understand.
not saying you don't.
Okay. Again,
And I don't appreciate me being wrapped up in your comments about inappropriate things being directed your way and names being called and so forth, again, without examples being provided, because you are misrepresenting me and what I may or may not have said in every way imaginable, and I'm not going to stand for that.
Well, I would like to hear from anyone else who thinks that this is actually something that we should move forward with.
Actually, I'm going to do this. I'm going to provide the council with the information I have. Is again, I have an obligation. This is information that's several months now past, kind of history, and I don't feel comfortable without sharing it with the rest of the council, honestly. I don't.
Well, I don't think tonight is the time for that, so I really don't want to sit here and go through he said, she said, and
Yeah, I would
I'm
agree
sorry.
there. The information can be shared. So
what I'm sending around for those that choose to take it is 2 different pieces of information. They're direct transcripts off of social media.
I don't want it.
It seems to me like we would still need to address the policy of how we are addressing any allegations, if there should be some. So I think if not here, it's going to have to be done at some workshop, which is maybe a more appropriate place for it to be. But I don't think we can, we can look at the allegations you have before us, but we can't address them because we don't have a policy for how we address such things at this time.
Keep in mind, I'm not presenting any specific allegations. This is transcripts from conversations, comments otherwise that have been made, that have been shared with me. I, as an elected official, am fulfilling my obligation and responsibility I believe I have to present it to the rest of the council.
Well, I think we are done with this conversation, unless anyone has anything else. All right, we will move on to staff reports.
So am I to understand then that
We are
the
moving
council
on
has
to-
no interest in looking at the information? Is that what I'm gathering?
I don't think that's what Councilmember Jensen and I said. I said we can look at the information but we can't, if it's not an allegation, we can look at the information when
But we don't have any
right now, I'm
formal
not gonna
procedure to
read it.
address it.
Yeah, this is,
But we don't have if it is if it's not an allegation, then
allegation
it's
of what?
information for us to be aware of. Only if it's an allegation, then we need to have policies for how to address that, which we don't have.
And
Which
again,
we would need a workshop.
as far as I'm concerned, they're not allegations. It's information that I believe the council needs to be privy to if you're not aware of conversations and certain exchanges that are taking place. Because I certainly wasn't aware until it was brought to my attention.
So if we were to read through this, which looks like it's a copy paste from something, because there's no official knowledge of where this is coming from. There's no official, like, I'm gonna take it at face value that it's true, but there's no, I don't even know what this is from. Is this emails?
I believe it came off of Nextdoor,
So you're not even sure where the content came from?
social media.
Social media, okay.
Did you
Which I
prepare the
believe-
document?
Did I what?
Did you prepare the packets?
I did.
You prepared this.
But you don't know where the information came from?
Nextdoor.
Okay, thank you.
So you copied and pasted public comments? Comments that are public already in nature? I guess I'm so confused. Like,
Exactly, which is the point. If the council wants to review the information that I have, that's one thing. If you want to go online and review it yourself
yes, please do.
and do your own assessment, I mean, that's
Well,
completely.
as long as you have like the full string, because I think sometimes there's a lot of back and forth. So sometimes you miss, if you don't read all the comments, you don't get the context of what the comments are made in. So that's my opinion from when I've read things on Nextdoor, which people are not very nice on there.
They
And
are
I don't,
not
I personally
very
like to
nice.
go on that website because
Yeah.
people are not nice.
They are not nice, and they say very, very bad things about people, so.
I mean, are we to read out that the current building is fine, would be a waste of taxpayer money? Is that what we want to read? Like, I just want to know, like, what is the allegation? Like, before I start reading this, what am I looking for?
From what I am gathering and the comments that I'm getting from people is they've obviously read the code of conduct policy. They understand, you know, the parameters around that, the guidelines around what they can expect or is anticipated in their interaction with elected officials. And there's certain belief that the policy has been violated. So I guess if you want, that's where a certain level of allegation comes about. I didn't ask nor get from people specifically what they think the violations are, frankly, because I think that that's our responsibility. That's what people need to look to us to ultimately do. There may be nothing. That's why I think it's just important that people review it.
Have you read through it and made a determination? That's what I want to know.
Yes, he compiled it, so he read through
But
it
I
all.
mean, but what is your position on it? Is
I
there a
don't have
violation
position.
there?
I don't know. I have not had a chance to look through the entirety of it. I mean, you have to consider there's this packet of clipped information, and then there's a stapled packet of information. So there's a fair amount there to read.
I don't know.
I just don't know. For our time to like go through this, I would appreciate it if you would look through it, if you're going to present it to us, and you can make that determination, present it to me, say, yes, I have an allegation, look at pages 13 and 14, because I will not have time to look at this. If you don't have a specific allegation and you haven't even read this, I mean, I'm sorry, but I would prefer if you would come to us with an allegation.
Yeah.
And you are prepared to say, I have an issue. Or if there's a resident that thinks there's an issue and they can point to something, they can send it to the administrator or staff.
Yeah, that's why I'm so
all of us
confused.
are going to have different, all of us are going to have different viewpoints and it's
taken.
taken out of context.
Yeah.
There's no dates, you would need like an official transcript from Nextdoor, like subpoenaed or something. Or I don't know.
Well, this is all public, though.
Well,
You
it's
can
public,
read
but you should
this.
have the dates, the times, the string, I don't know.
I don't know. This is, to me, I don't even understand. Like, so I actually don't understand.
I mean, I read through just skimmed the first 3 pages. There's nothing to do with Mayor Zierden. I mean, this is just residents' posts, I guess.
Yeah, I don't even know where,
If you keep reading through it, Steve.
Okay, but I mean, a lot of this is just resident
We didn't even
discussion.
need those pages.
But how do we know where this came? I mean, at the end of the day,
Well,
it's
it
like,
was
how do
about
you even?
providing as much as the full context around the conversation.
Around the discussions
That's
was your
why
intent.
there's
Okay.
going to be posts and information in there from other people.
I mean, there's inappropriate language in here by
And that was not by me, so
by residents.
Well, here's a post. All the things will be addressed in our streets plan. I'd recommend reaching out to get more information, which includes a paved trail. That was a post that you did a week ago, according to this.
Yeah, I don't.
Is that what we're? Do you have anything specific at this point? Or just read through it and we make our own determination?
Honestly, I believe that that's where we're at, is individual council members need to take a look at it, need to process it.
I don't think our role is to read through next door and like pick out and try to find allegations.
Obviously, I know it's all public data. Why would I ever say anything that would be looked at as misconduct? I'm actually trying to address some of the resident concerns because there's a lot of misinformation on there. So at the end of the day, I don't even see anything in here, and I don't take back anything I've ever posted on Nextdoor. Nothing. I mean, I don't know. So I'd like to move on.
I understand, Rebecca, what you're saying about providing some additional understanding or thoughts around potential violations of the policy. I just feel like it puts me.
Well, I mean, so one of us would have to bring it up. I mean, one of us would have to say, this page, I think you did something wrong. I mean, it's going to be on somebody.
Yeah, like where's the allegation? I don't even know what the misconduct is. Where is the misconduct?
That there was something done wrong here. Otherwise, I mean, that's what you're asking us to do.
Which again, I think as an elected body is kind of what we need to equally share in as far as responsibility, is to look through it and assess what's taking place for yourself.
I don't comment on Nextdoor. I don't. So I have
There's nothing in there. I'm telling you, like, it's all public data, and a couple of residents didn't like my truthful responses. You know what? If they want to consider that allegation of misconduct because they didn't like what I have to say, they didn't like the information, they didn't like the truth, I don't know how else to. I'm super confused because it's all public, and it's like, why would I say something that I felt like somebody could bring against me as an allegation? It just doesn't make sense.
And I feel like if somebody had a complaint, we've gotten probably an email from them.
I did, and a couple of them called me bad names, and they said bad things about my family, and again, I just feel so not what council members should be doing to one another, and a witch hunt, which
Excuse me, once again, I'm going to clarify that this is not me doing anything. This is me bringing information forward that I've been provided to by people who have interactions with you that they clearly feel are inappropriate.
Nobody has to bring anything to you. It's public data. I don't understand even why you're bringing this to council. I don't. It doesn't make sense. You can't even point out one thing in here that is misconduct. So why would you? So did
I just not say I haven't had a chance to look through all of it? Okay.
But you had a chance to print it and bind it, but you didn't have a chance to read through it?
Exactly.
Okay, I'm not even entertaining this anymore. All right, we are going to move on to staff.
Madam Mayor, I just have one procedural question for Councilmember Scott, and is that by providing this council, are you intending to submit this into the public record?
It's already public data. I don't know. Go ahead. I
don't know, honestly.
Clerk, that's a legitimate question I'm asking as you're bringing this forward in public. I need to know from my responsibility as the clerk, is this being included as part of the public record?
As far as me providing information to the council, if that constitutes making it part of the public record, then I guess it is.
Go ahead. I think there's a bunch in here that we can learn from, especially from
I think some of the residents would love to see their names in here.
I think they would not, actually, to be honest, because some of the things that were said in here, you can easily say that's not true, or if you want to, I am not ashamed of anything that I've ever said, so I do not apologize for anything.
I think part of the concern from a community member was when they had emailed the mayor a private message, and that is part of what I provided to you. That message was then posted on social media.
Did you read it?
I have not read it.
Okay.
Why do you find that so unbelievable?
Because I don't understand. Like, you haven't read anything, and
I didn't say that, did I?
I'll admit that I read it, and the mayor never announced who it was from.
Yeah, it was anonymous. It was never. She took credit all on her own.
So when intrusive message is emailed to council, we're not, that's not our role to take those intrusive messages and to call out family names and accuse you. Disagree well is what we were taught, right? So when the mayor posted that, and I got shown it, and I got a screenshot sent to me saying, what's going on here? And I said, I don't know. And I read the email and I'm like, that's outlandish. Why would somebody email this to somebody? Now, when the mayor shared it, it was never from whom. It was an anonymous thing. For all we know, she could have made it up herself and said, I'm trying to, somebody's calling for attention and I just made it up myself, but somebody else claimed it. And they feel like they were pointed out when it was never them. They're the ones who claimed it. So what I would encourage you, Mr. Scott, was if you haven't even read the email, you haven't read the post, you haven't seen the recourse, I'd advise for you to put yourself in their shoes and consider what was the knee-jerk reaction. Now, you might not have done that, and that's perfectly fine. I've had emails sent to me blackmailing me saying, do this or else. I chose not to do anything with it. That is not a role that we signed up for. As a city council person, we are a representative for the city. We're not to be the whipping post when something doesn't go somebody's way. We're not to be the one who shake their finger. You can say, I don't agree with your decision, but that's why we're all elected.
Right.
I wouldn't disagree with anything you said, so,
I mean, I agree.
again, I just want to make it clear, this is not me looking to gather any enjoyment out of this or the like. This is, frankly, like I said early on, quite freaking frustrating, truth be told, that I even had people in the community bothered enough about what's going on to even approach me.
But you weren't bothered by what was said about me? I mean, you obviously don't care about me at all.
I'm not taking a position one way or another. You're the one that's doing that for me, and then once again, I don't appreciate it.
Again, I didn't do anything to you.
You're putting words in my mouth.
I didn't. I just find it very concerning that you bring alleged allegations.
And you also send out emails and forward emails that are sent to council, to public, do you not?
I sure do.
Yep.
Where's the transparency in that?
Why don't you send it to everybody?
I would send it to anybody that wants it.
Anybody that wants it, okay.
What's the harm in doing that? It's public information, is it not?
It is, but if you call a staff member being outlandish for an idea of knowing where staff is, isn't that kind of backlashing on what staff is?
But give me an example. I am not following with what you're saying.
When you forwarded on an email that contained what the city forecasting will be for staff, you made a comment that it's outlandish that somebody who's been here for such a short amount of time could foresee that far into the future.
Exactly. Sure, in my opinion.
And do you think that portrays against code of conduct about downgrading what staff is doing publicly? Disagree well. If you have an issue with what the staff is doing, you should bring that confidentially and privately and discuss it.
Well, then that same standard should be applied to others that choose to share a private message that was intended between two people publicly. Should it not?
It was anonymously. And yeah, I've had a post that you've actually posted on Nextdoor talking about us as a council, saying, I was witness to one of the most disgusting displays of people lacking compassion I have seen, meaning the complete and total disregard of resident concerns voiced during open forum. I mean, to call us out and talk bad about us on a public site, you don't find that to be disturbing at all?
I find that to be someone sharing their opinion. And last I checked, that falls into my rights as a citizen.
All of these things are opinions then of Madam Mayor Angel Zierden.
If that's how the council wants to interpret them and handle them, then
How do you
so be
interpret
it.
it?
I don't know, short of reading through all of it and having collective opportunity amongst this group to have conversation.
So it's an opinion, but until you read it, it's not an opinion. Is what you just said. We just clarified that it's your opinion, and I just said this is an opinion, and you're saying it's not an opinion until you read it? What point does it become?
Yeah, see, now you're trying to do a play on words, Mike, and I'm
No,
not going down that road.
You're saying that you're okay, you can say whatever you want.
Anything is a matter of opinion until you look at it, and in this case, apply it against a policy that this city council adopted.
Okay, what about the fact that you call this the most disgusting display of lack of empathy? Why would, I certainly don't have lack of empathy for people.
Okay, well, you're entitled to your opinion.
Right, so that's my point of this.
Well, and if that's the entire outcome of it, then so be it. I'm simply bringing the information forward, making the council aware, whatever the council collectively wants to do with it or how they want to handle it. That was the
I
whole
would
point
love
of
to
it.
hear, once you have a chance to read it, what your opinion on the matter is, as far as if it's an allegation or not. That's what I feel like you wanted to bring it to us, but if you
No, I
expect
did
us
not
to read
want to
it, then I
bring it to
expect you to
you.
read it and have an opinion on it as well.
That's where I think there's a misunderstanding. I most certainly did not want to bring it to you. But I'm
Okay, so
certainly not going to look.
Not that you didn't want to, okay, so you did bring this to us. You want us to read this, so are you going to read it as well and then come back
Absolutely.
with an opinion?
I will be sharing my thoughts just as much as
As
I
far
would
as if it's an
suspect others.
allegation or not?
I don't know so much if it's an allegation. I mean, in the sense that does it
Because what,
implicate, the standards and the policy?
I'm just curious as to what is this going to help with if I read through this? How is this helpful?
I think that's a determination you're going to have to make yourself. I'm not going to make that for you.
I'd make a recommendation, we move on from here.
I agree. All right, staff reports.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, one thing I've had for you tonight is just for yourselves and members of the public, just a reminder, we have our workshop scheduled for January 16 at 5 p.m. To receive the organizational assessment report, and then also Tuesday, January 23rd at 5 p.m. That's when we'll be presenting the City Hall design. Regarding both those, obviously, we'll get information out ahead of time for City Hall specifically. Assistant Administrator Ike will be issuing a press release next week. And then we're shooting for the 16th of January, so in 1 week ahead of time from that workshop, publishing the public packet regarding City Hall. So people have time to review that ahead of that workshop and open house on the 23rd. That's all I have for you today, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. All right, anyone have anything else to report? All right. Agenda forecast?
At this point, Madam Mayor, being the second of the month, and then the conversation the council had regarding agenda forecast, I really don't have anything for you today. We'll be taking some time with staff and reevaluating the better way to put that agenda forecast before you.
All right, thank you.
I just have one item on the agenda forecast, or actually a couple things. February, I would assume we may have a workshop, but the golf cart rules, that was supposed to be part of a workshop. And I also would like a presentation of the continuous improvement plan from Chief Schwanko. I would like to know what the projected costs are to the city. The amount that Breezy is paying currently for the fire services, I mean, we are paying a large amount. I just want to know and understand why that is. And he did clear up some things, but I think that's something, the consultant Sheldon Cohn called out a truck sitting in our public safety building that I read that needs to be replaced. So what are going to be the ongoing cost and projected, on the levy each year? Because it's significant.
Thank you. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.